Ever since that day, when his chi had mixed in with his blood, Quinn's senses had been sharper than ever. It was as if the chi was activating on its own at times, and right now he was feeling the same thing. As soon as the strange mud ball had broken, his senses were telling him to fall back, and he did well to listen to them by moving out of the way. Standing in front of him now was Duke. The reason for being in the ball for so long was to ensure that he had enough time to equip his soul weapon. Right now, from head to toe, his body was covered in a strange rock-like substance. His size was nearly twice the size of what he was before, and the only humane feature that could be seen on him was his eyes. He looked like some type of rock beast made out of, well, rocks. I guess he's not going to take it easy on me the same way as the sergeant did. That armor looks sturdy, and I don't have my gauntlets either. This is going to be a hard one, Quinn thought. Suddenly, as Duke lifted his hand, giant columns of rock appeared shooting out from underneath, moving and swerving left and right at the very tip of the column. It was slightly larger, making the bendy columns look like snakes. The way they moved also resembled that of a snake as well. Moving his hand, one of the large snakes moved forward and started slithering fast against the floor. Quinn was waiting for the right moment to use his flash step to avoid the strike, but then suddenly the head opened its mouth and several slab-like bricks came shooting out of it. Performing the flash step earlier than planned, Quinn moved away from most of the attacks, but he was unprepared for the other rock snake that was also going for him. Using its large head, it managed to slam into his body at great speed. 80/95 HP. The blow was powerful, and the snake continued to push both it and Quinn across the floor. Using one hand, Quinn managed to harden his fingers so much that he had dug his hand into the head of the snake. Then, with the other, he started to perform the motions of the hammer strike. He knew a normal punch wouldn't be enough. "Get off me!" Quinn shouted, as a large and powerful bang was heard. Pieces of rock flew everywhere as the snake's head and weight was flung off to the side. When did Quinn get that much strength? Vorden thought. How is someone able to grow that quickly in such a short amount of time? Still, while Vorden was wondering about Quinn, it seemed like Duke was relaxing at the other side of the field while Quinn was having a hard time. Looking around him, Quinn had noticed that the other snake had suddenly gone missing, but before everyone else could, with his sensitive ears, Quinn could hear rumbling, and it was coming from underneath. Flash step. The ground started shaking, and out from below the other large snake popped up. If he hadn't dodged it in time, he would have been hit. Damn, he's like a little rat, Duke thought. Hitting the snakes is useless. Even if I take them down, he'll just make another one. What I need to do is to go after the person that's controlling them, Quinn thought as he started to run as fast as he could towards Duke. Just as before, the snakes opened their mouths and started to shoot out multiple slabs at Quinn. By using a mixture of his speed, strength, and flash steps, he was able to avoid most of the blows, but still got hit now and then. Compared to when fighting Dylan, though, there were far more slabs, so he was getting hit more often. 78/95, 76/95, 70/95. Still, Quinn didn't let that deter him. Every time he got hit by a slab, he kept his target in sight and carried on going towards Duke. Then, at one point, the snakes finally stopped firing. He was now too close to Duke. Using the momentum, Quinn jumped up in the air and swung his body out while performing a spinning roundhouse kick. It was a move that would allow him to produce the most power in an instant, and would be too fast for Duke to block. Yes, he's got him, Bill thought. The kick slammed right into Duke's side, and a few cracks appeared. But he hadn't even been moved a single inch from his spot, and even the cracked markings on his soul weapon had healed in an instant. It looked as if Quinn had never hit him in the first place. "You're an idiot," Duke said, as he threw out a fist towards Quinn. Surprisingly, the fist was incredibly fast for his size, and the only way Quinn could avoid the blow was by performing another flash step. "What do you think this is?" Duke said arrogantly. "You will never be able to do any harm to me. Underneath my soul weapon, I even have king tier armor protecting me. Your weak punches and kicks will do nothing." Quinn hated to admit it, but the way he was now, a normal punch wouldn't do anything. He didn't have his gauntlets, and he doubted the normal hammer strike would be able to do much either. Should I just run away? He'll never be able to catch me, right? Quickly, he caught glimpses of all the people he had helped so far. He could see the look on their faces. They were all deeply worried about him. Not just them, but his friends, Layla, Vorden, and Logan. Before he never had this. He never had people who were concerned and worried for him. I'm not going to run away. At least not until I give this guy one good punch, Quinn thought. Let me show you what a real punch is like, Duke said as he lifted his hand in the air. Pieces of rock rose from the ground, and some parts of the snake started to form around Duke's fist, doubling it in size, creating a giant fist. I don't understand, Haley said. Won't that just make his fist heavy, not stronger or faster? You're wrong, Nathan replied. You see, the top Earth users have complete control over Earth. By covering his entire hand, he can use his ability to push the Earth as fast as possible. It's as if he was moving a ton of weight at the speed of his regular punch, while also being enhanced by his beast gear underneath. It's best if the Night Demon gets out of there now. The two snakes stood behind him like a wall, waiting for Quinn to make a break for it. But never for a second did Quinn think about running away. You're right, Duke. I was an idiot to think my weak punches were ever enough to stop you. I'm sorry for not giving it everything I've got. Ignoring the silly taunts, Duke started to swing his giant fist towards Quinn. It was moving at the normal speed of a regular punch, which shocked everyone that was watching. How could something so large move like that? It was as if the wind didn't exist. Quinn slammed his foot down hard on the ground, which caused a small crater to be formed. He then allowed the energy to rise up inside him. This time, it wasn't just his strength added to it. The red blood energy was rising too. If he wanted to hurt Duke, he had no choice but to perform the blood hammer strike. The blood energy then started to shift from his toes to one of his hands. Then something strange happened, something unexpected, but it was too late for Quinn to stop now. The strange pink chi energy started to move about with the blood energy. Still, Quinn didn't care about it and continued trying to perform the strongest punch he could possibly do. Blood hammer strike, snapping back and firing off his other hand like a shotgun. An extremely loud, thunderous clap was heard. The two fists had collided. There was no equal force of power, as one of them was the clear winner. Duke's giant stone fist immediately started to crumble, as all of the earth used to create it was shot backwards. Screams were heard as giant pieces of rocks started to crash and fall to the ground, and dust had also been thrown up everywhere. What happened? Did the Night Demon die? Is everyone okay? Nathan shouted out. As the two fists had hit, a large dust cloud had spread out, blocking everyone's view. The only thing that they could hear and see was the thunderclap and the large rocks falling on the floor. As the dust started to settle, the place where the Night Demon once was, he was now nowhere to be seen. Then Nathan and all the others quickly went to look at Duke. Gasps were heard throughout the whole crowd at what they were seeing. Someone get the doctor quick, one of the sergeants called. A pool of blood was at Duke's feet, and his whole right arm from his shoulder was no longer there. I'll kill that bast *RD. While dust had blocked everyone's vision, Quinn had to act fast, and there were more reasons for this than just one. Truthfully, he wanted to continue the fight, but now when looking at his right hand, it had completely shattered. The skin had been torn off and the bones had fractured completely as well. The attack, what was that? Did the blood mix in with the chi? He thought. It was clear, though, that his body was unable to handle this power currently. With no protection from gauntlets whatsoever, Quinn's fist had also taken Duke's attack head-on, which might have had something to do with it as well. But this wasn't the reason why he had to stop fighting. He had already used up his blood bank skill in an instant, and his arm was already starting to heal on the spot. It was a lot of damage, but this wound was nowhere near fatal, and Quinn could continue on. That was, of course, if it wasn't for the fact that part of his suit had been destroyed in the punch as well. The suit was designed to cover him from head to toe. There would be no gaps. The attack, however, caused the suit to break, which meant outside in the middle of the day, his skin was exposed to the sunlight. He was far weaker than he once was. Still, Quinn was a lot faster than a regular human, even with the sun outside. His stats had improved so much, so that he was as strong as when he had first evolved. The dust was a big bonus, and while it was starting to settle, Quinn was able to rejoin back with the others. Everyone was far too focused looking at the fight ahead to notice he wasn't there, and someone had returned. In fact, many of the students were jumbled up, as they would constantly move out of order to get a better view of the fight. The teachers had no control over the students, and it had become slightly chaotic as soon as the night demon appeared. When it started to get intense towards the end, they started to scramble in fear as objects and debris came flying their way. Returning to the line, Vorden had found Quinn and could see him wearing his new gauntlets. Is he covering up an injury from the fight? Vorden thought. It was a close guess, but not quite. The gauntlets were covering part of his ripped uniform. Many of the other students had also drawn out their beast weapons, as some of the rocks from the fight had come out hurling towards their way, and they had used it to protect themselves. Although Nathan and the sergeants had done a good job in making sure the bulk of the flying debris didn't hit anyone. When the dust had settled, that's when they finally saw it. Duke's arm that had completely been removed. "All right, everyone," Nathan shouted. "Back to your dorm rooms now. You are to stay inside until further notice." The students quickly did as they were told, while the others went to care for Duke. It was more than eventful that evening, to say the very least. As Quinn was left with the others, a smile appeared on his face, as he pictured the anger on Duke's face. "I didn't get the level up I needed, but I gave Duke what he deserved." When returning to the room, Vorden went to check on Quinn's arm, but it had already completely healed, and he seemed fine. Vorden wanted to lecture him, but he couldn't help but also smile as he pictured Duke's face. Instead, he gave Quinn a high five. "Good job. He finally got a little payback," Vorden said. "But please don't give me a heart attack like that again, or at least warn me beforehand." For the rest of the night, Quinn was trying to figure out just what had happened when he had used the blood hammer. Somehow, he had used his chi in the attack as well. Right now it was too powerful for his body to handle, but he knew that it was incredibly strong. If he had some way to control it better, then it would allow him to just get that bit stronger. He had to learn to control it enough to a point where his body could handle an attack at that level. The problem was, how would he practice, as this wasn't something he could perform in the game? The chi he could feel in the real world didn't quite register in the system as well. It was just different. The rest of the day, the students were told to remain indoors. They were expecting some type of announcement to be made, but it never came. Instead, the next day they were told to just continue lessons as normal. However, it was nearly impossible. The classes were filled with people talking about what happened, and a dreaded rumor had been spread. That Duke's arm had completely gone. If his arm was simply detached from his body, the doctors would be able to do something and heal it back. But it turns out they were unable to find any trace of the arm at all, as if it was obliterated to pieces. With no regeneration ability, it was impossible for it to grow back. A robotic arm could be used to replace it, but everyone knew for sure that for elemental users, their powers were channeled through their hands and legs. Missing a whole arm had significantly weakened his power. The students who were told to go to the dungeon for sticking up for the night demon were now under the personal protection of Nate. He personally wouldn't allow anything to happen to them. He had sent out an emergency report to Paul, and all he could do now was wait for his return. With the way Duke currently was, he was in no condition to try to go against General Nathan and the other sergeants. The problem was, from that day onward, the whole school felt divided. Not many interactions were done between the first year and the second year camps, and it was unlikely Paul would return before the school term had ended either. Quinn was able to get his suit repaired. Luckily, Logan had ordered the crystals whenever he had seen them pop online, expecting this to happen at one point or another. It was a clear problem with the suit. It was only at the basic tier after all, and was easily damaged, which would hamper his skills in the daylight. It just made Quinn aware that he needed to get the ring made as soon as possible. The only problem was it required the Deathbat crystals from the Red Portal planet, so it might be a long wait until he received them. He of course no longer went out at night as the Night Demon. Duke would send out his sergeants to be on the lookout every night, including the teachers. Not only that, but there was no longer any need for the Night Demon. Quinn had successfully done his job in quelling nearly all serious cases of bullying happening around the school. If the Night Demon was strong enough to do that to a general, then a student would stand no chance. This was the thought in their heads. For the remaining 2 weeks, all Quinn could do instead was to continue to train in the VR center to gain EXP. With no one starting any more fights, it was even hard for him to fight normally. If he did, then he would be the one causing problems starting fights. Thinking back to the fight with Duke, Quinn could tell that he had improved a lot. Never in his life would he have dreamed of being able to do something like that. He had a good feeling that if he was able to use his blood abilities and shadow abilities from the start, he might have won. In the end, he had run out of time and was unable to level up. However, he had learned a lot about his chi, gained new weapons, and learned an entire new shadow skill in that time. He was now ready. The first day of summer was right around the corner. Finally, it was the first day of summer. The school term had ended, and it was the only time students were allowed to leave the military base if they wanted to. All the students who had planned to leave would meet up on the second-year field. On there, a large teleporter would be placed which would take them all to the same Earth station. From there, students would make their own way to wherever they needed to go. However, Quinn had other plans, and unlike the other students who were packing and getting ready to leave, Quinn was patiently waiting in his room for most of the students to go. It was already midday, and he had decided that he would get a nice long rest before heading out. When he finally did wake up, he noticed that Vorden was no longer in his bed by his side. Most of the students were pretty excited that they would finally be able to go home and had packed beforehand, ready to go back any second. He must have gone back to his family. I wonder what Layla will do, Quinn thought, since she was no longer a part of Pure, and he had chosen not to inform her of his plans. Luckily, before Vorden had left, Quinn had decided to ask for some blood to fill up his blood bank. He had actually also tried to get the materials to make the flask and ring in his item shop, but as expected, they were nearly impossible to find. He now realized why Fex was so happy when he had put up the crystals for sale. Hopefully, the vampire planet is a dark one. It should be, as Fex said. Only when vampires reached a certain stage would they be sent out for a quest to obtain the materials for the ring. Leaving his room, Quinn chose to look out of his window onto the field. The last few students that were remaining looked to be entering the portal with their belongings. He watched them go in one by one, and time continued to pass. I'm just delaying it, aren't I? Everything Quinn needed was either in his system inventory or was in the dimensional space in the shadow. They had no clue where they would land once entering the portal, so it was best to be prepared. They might even just land in the middle of a whole vampire city, and they needed to be ready to explain themselves. Finally, not wasting any more time, Quinn decided to enter Logan's room. "Come in," Logan said. As Quinn opened the door, he was greeted with something he had never expected. Inside the room wasn't just Logan, but Vorden and Layla were there waiting as well. What are you guys doing here? Aren't you going home?" Quinn asked, trying to figure out what was going on. "No, they're not, Quinn. I decided to tell them about what was happening because I knew you wouldn't. I told you before, they are equally invested in this, just as much as you are." Logan replied. "He's right, Quinn," Vorden replied. "You should let us make our own choices, and you have to remember, Peter and Fex aren't just your friends, they're ours as well." Layla then started to walk up to Quinn and looked him in the eyes. "You idiot," she shouted. "Why do you think I wanted to turn myself in the first place? It's because of how weak I felt when being around you, how I felt hopeless. I did this thinking I could finally help you, and then you go and chose to not tell me. We are part of the same problem. We have a connection," Layla said as she stopped and walked off back near the others, fearing that her emotions would have gotten the better of her. "Look, I understand, but I was just looking out for you, Goo." Quinn stopped in the middle of his sentence. He finally realized that what he was doing was exactly what they had done for him when the vampires came for Fex. He remembered just how upset he was when they didn't tell him. He felt the same way. "You're right," Quinn said. "It's your decision, but Vorden, you can't copy vampire abilities, and other than Logan's, which is difficult to use, it might be troublesome for you. These vampires are incredibly strong. Didn't you just give me these?" Vorden said, turning around and showing the white and black curved swords on his back. "I'm pretty sure I can fend for myself. Not just that, Quinn. What about you? If you get hurt, you're going to need your little blood bank, right?" Quinn didn't know why, but whenever he did need blood in the past, he used to always go to Vorden or Layla. As for Logan, he tended to avoid asking him the question. In a way, Logan's blood just didn't seem or sound as appetizing. It probably had something to do with his diet of strange sandwiches. "So you all know what's happening then, right? About how they're going to kill Fex. I don't know what's happening with Peter, but I'm going to try my best to stop it," Quinn explained. "I've been trying to get stronger for this very reason. We could be going up, or even fighting against them to save him." "Quinn, we already know that," Layla said. Sorry to interrupt, Logan said, as he pushed a button on his table, allowing for his bedroom door to slide open. Suddenly, a person came crashing into the room with their face planting against the floor. The door quickly closed behind her. As they all looked at the person, it was someone they all recognized. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop," she said, with her head down on the floor begging. "I just came here for Layla." The person who was on the other side of the door was CIA. "Don't worry, she didn't hear anything. This room is soundproof and locked. Like an aircraft, I created my own ventilation system that I order the parts for and replace once in a while," Logan explained. "No wonder I couldn't smell her outside," Quinn thought. Layla had quickly gone down to help her up, and CIA now stood closely behind her, while peeking at all the others. Seeing how different CIA acted before and after the memory loss was making Quinn feel a bit queasy in his stomach. "Quinn, I think she should come with us," Layla said. "What?" Quinn blurted out. "Wait, look, she knows nothing, she remembers nothing, she has nowhere to go, and right now I'm the only one she's got. I don't think she would betray us, and she helps me with my powers. I promise, I'll explain everything to her, and you can make her my responsibility." The room was silent for a bit, as Quinn couldn't believe what Layla was suggesting. At one point in time, CIA was the enemy. Could removing someone's memory really change them that much to a point where they could trust her? Of course, Quinn now trusted Layla, but he barely knew CIA. "Please, Quinn," Layla said, with a glint in her eyes, making her look like a sad puppy dog. "I think we should take her," Logan said. "We need all the help we can get. Her ability was extremely handy when we were fighting the King-tier beast, and also, it will allow Vorden an ability to copy as well. Why don't we have a vote? All those who wish to bring CIA along." Logan raised his hand, and so did CIA and Layla. And then when Quinn turned to look at Vorden, he noticed his hand was up, the only person he thought who might have been on his side. "Well, I guess my say doesn't really mean anything then," Quinn said. The reason why Vorden wanted CIA along was that it didn't matter if she lived or died on this trip, in his opinion. It wasn't someone to look out for like the others. He too agreed with Logan. The honest truth was having no one's ability that he could copy worried him a lot. At least this would give him something. "Okay, before you go, I prepared something," Logan said, as he turned his chair around and went to grab two small chests. He opened one of the chests with one of his mechanical arms that were connected to his chair. The first chest contained 5 small spray bottles that looked a bit like perfume bottles. Quinn knew exactly what it was. "This is a formula I've been working on. The vamp." Logan stopped himself there for a second, realizing CIA had yet to learn of everything yet. "Layla, it might be best for you to explain this to her now, and then I can go on to explain this." Layla then took herself and CIA over to the bed that was on the other side, while the boys patiently waited for her explanation. They were waiting for some type of shock or horrified look to come across CIA's face, but it never came. "I don't care. I'll do whatever you say. I just want to be with you," CIA said as she leapt across the bed and jumped on Layla, giving her a huge hug. The boys looked away at the awkward scene and interaction. "Didn't CIA used to have a thing for you?" Quinn said, giving Vorden a nudge on the arm. "I think that might have all been a pure act thing," he replied. Once the two girls were done, they had come back to join the group and finish listening to Logan's explanation. "As I was saying before, every human here, I think I should say, needs to carry this on them at all times. The effect of the spray lasts for 5 hours. 2 puffs are all you need, so it should be plenty to last our whole trip there. Just make sure you don't lose it or break it. The vampires have a particular smell of their own, which allows them to recognize their own kind. This has been created by emulating Quinn's smell. So to everyone else, they will think you are a vampire. Don't forget to spray yourselves. If you want to be safe, spray yourself every 4 hours, because a second over 5 could be your death while we're there." Vorden and CIA took a bottle each, while Logan kept the spare, as well as the chest for himself. Then he presented the other chest, and opened that as well. Inside this one were several different designs of masks. "Quinn, and I already have one. This is for the rest of you to choose. Inside these masks is a communicator. Although it's best if we stay together, we always have to prepare for the worst. There is a good chance we might be split up at some point. Logan continued explaining a few more details to the group about all the different case scenarios that could occur when going through the portal and what their plan of actions were. After all the explanations were done, everyone then prepared themselves with all their equipment and supplies. They all also chose one of the masks, which each had a slightly different design to them. This time, Logan was the carrier of items, preparing food pills and water pills for ultimate survival. After all, not all of them could survive just on blood and other things on this trip. There was a fairly large rucksack on his back that looked extremely heavy, but the main thing was that inside of it was a portable teleporter that would lead them back to Earth. They needed a way to get back no matter what. When Logan bent down to pick up the large and heavy rucksack, several spider-like legs appeared from his back, gripping it and holding it in place, taking all of the weight completely off of Logan. It looked kind of silly still, as Logan was fairly short and the rucksack was bigger than him. The explanations were all done, and everyone was now ready. The square teleporter was placed on the floor, and the input code was put in. The device started to start up, as mechanical sounds were heard and two arms flung open from the side of the machine. Seconds later, a portal opened displaying a green-like color, but they knew this wasn't a green portal planet they were going to. No one, and I repeat no one, is dying on this trip. Quinn said, "We're going to save lives, not sacrifice ours. Understand?" Everyone nodded, and then formed a line in front of each other, with their hands on top of each other's shoulders. They all then slowly walked in until eventually everyone had gone through the portal and into the vampire world. It was midday, the sun was burning brightly, and there didn't seem to be a cloud in sight. Summer had truly started, and all of the kids had returned to their families for the break. Although not everyone saw this as a holiday, as some were still busy working as hard as ever. In a particular place outside, there was a fairly large palace. This palace was designed using ancient Chinese architecture. The roofs were slanted and pointed, while the main palace was a few tiers higher than everything else, allowing it to overlook the entire area. It stood out because at the very top, the highest roof was made completely out of gold. Underneath the place was the second tier that completely surrounded the palace in a square-like shape. In this tier, there were several houses that usually belonged to the workers of the palace or high-ranking officials. And finally, the third tier, a very large open square with a few large buildings that were used for several things. But mainly it was used for students. This was the home of the Greylash family. On the third tier, on the large square-like platform, around 50 or so students of mixed ages were all wearing a white sash around their clothes. They were here shouting out in unison, 1, 2, 3. As they called out numbers, a slight pause could be heard in between, and then straight after that a zap. Standing in front of all of them was the teacher. He too had a white sash, but the edges of it were embroidered with gold, which showed his higher rank. 1. Remember to breathe out as you complete each motion. The teacher demonstrated with sparks of electricity shouting out about 3 meters from his fist. 2. He shouted, bringing both of his fists down to his waist, and this time a small cone of electricity could be seen covering his body. And 3. He shouted, suddenly jumping off the ground and swirling his body, making himself look like a thunderbolt, quickly traveling 5 meters ahead of his original position. As he landed, he quickly walked back to his original position. Again, he shouted. The students along with the teacher repeated the actions. Some seemed to get the hang of it and were able to perform them well. Some others would complete the moves, but no lightning powers could be seen, while for others, only during some movements would their powers be shown. Looks like they are doing quite well. A voice said from behind the teacher. Well, indeed, the slightly old man said while smiling. Then he realized he had recognized the voice, and as soon as he turned around he bowed down. I'm sorry, I didn't think you would be here on the first day. Don't mind me. It's boring to stay up in that palace and incredibly lonely too. I don't know how my grandfather did it. Owen replied with his usual fan covering the bottom part of his face. The only way one could tell what expression he was making was by looking at his eyes. Right now, they were like a crescent moon upside down, which would mean he was smiling. Their progress has been quick, all thanks to you. When you took over and shared those techniques of yours, their ability and powers all grew faster than I have ever seen them before. I'm sorry the elders didn't try to listen to you before, including myself, sir. The old man was trying his best to please Owen. What he had said was the truth. The students really had improved greatly with the new techniques that had been handed down. Although he was giving more praise than he usually would, as he remembered he was one of the elders that had chosen to vote against him when choosing a leader. Don't worry, I understand many of you are traditionalists. Many people don't like change, but whether we like it or not, change is coming. That's why I thought it would be best to teach the future generation a better way. Owen said, I fear something big is coming soon, and the only thing we can do is prepare ourselves. Suddenly, a small bolt of lightning seemed to land right by Owen's side, and a loud bang had come with it. As the lightning bolt disappeared, a man stood there in its place, mostly covered in white, and a headband covering his head and face, known as a facumen, and a zukin only revealing his eyes. The person whispered into Owen's ears, and as he heard the news, the fan covering his face dropped down to his side. Perhaps that change is coming sooner than I thought, he said. That fool. I knew he would act. Of course, he wouldn't heed the warning of the others. It's only because I know of our past that I chose not to act either. Keep me updated the best you can. We must prepare for the worst. Out in the middle of the ocean, 3 large ships could be seen traveling next to each other. The ships were large and around half the size of a cruise ship. They were all heading towards one direction in particular. In the ship that stationed in the center, out on the deck at the front on the very tip, was Jack True Dream, the newest member of the Big Four. There were 2 guards who stood by his side. One of them, Kenny, who he always kept by him for certain reasons most of the time. But after his failure to comply with his orders, he had been a bit distant from Jack. Still, Jack wanted him by his side today, for Kenny had the ability to put others to sleep. With this, it allowed his own ability to be used that much easier, and he was hoping to score big today. Next to him on his other side was a fairly large man, who looked almost like a giant. He was covered in the likes of a beast armor someone had never seen in their lives. On his back, a large spiked ball as his weapon, and his armor looked like it had been taken straight out of gladiatorial times. On this ship alone there were 500 men, all with a mixture of abilities, but they were his very best. On the 2 ships by his side, they also contained 500 men each, making a total small army of around 1,500 people, all of them belonging to the True Dream family. This was only about 1/10 of the people belonging to the True Dream family, but these people held about 2/3 of their entire power. The rest were left to guard his city. None of the public knew what he was doing at this moment, as they hadn't been made aware of it, and he wanted to keep it that way. For today, he was starting a war with the Blades family. I bet they thought they were quite smart, hiding their family on an uncharted island in the middle of nowhere. Jack said, but you underestimate my information gathering. Even if you are powerful, I would love to see how they deal with it when 1,500 of the strongest ability users in the world turn up right at your doorstep uninvited. Jack then started to hysterically laugh at his own genius. Once he got rid of the Blades, he would not only obtain their power, but also the shadow power along with it, and perhaps many more secrets that they were hiding. If all the others were scared of the Blades before, they would be terrified once they found out that Jack had not only defeated them, but also taken their power. The teleporters are ready, sir, Kenny said by his side. The group would have loved to invade by teleporting right to the island. However, there was no such way. The only way to reach the island in the first place was to travel via a ship or an aircraft. Still, they needed a quick way back home. Finally, the fairly large island could be seen in sight. Even from a distance, a large mountain could be seen that seemed to have been flattened. At the very top of it, a strange giant castle-like structure was seen, and behind that, what looked like a very large stone tablet. Impressive, but soon all of this will be mine. The ships had reached shore, and the invasion had begun. On the private island, on top of the hill, there was a fairly large castle that had been built. Just beside it, a fairly large stone tablet was also present. The stone tablet was at least double the size of the castle itself, and even the castle was huge. Inside the castle, there wasn't a king or a queen, and there weren't many people who lived there either. In total, only 100 or so people lived there. Inside the castle, in the throne room, some people who looked like a regular family were sitting down, eating dinner at a large dining table. At the head of the table was a large, muscular old man. He had a short, scruffy beard and also scruffy, spiky hair that had completely grayed out at this point. They were currently dressed in their everyday clothing, and the old man himself was in a regular sleeveless top that showed his large, bulging muscles. His arm itself was as wide as a regular person's thigh. The rest of the family were all dressed a little nicer, but none of them were wearing beast gear. However, if one was to look around the room, they could see beast armor all over the dining room being put out on display, that too in multiple different styles. It seemed as if they were merely some collector's items. Also sitting at the table was a younger man, who was only graying at the sides. His hair was neatly swept to the side and blonde in color. Sitting next to him was a female who was similar age. Opposite the two of them were a pair of young brother and sister, both of whom were blonde as well. They were twins who seemed to be in their mid-20s. "So, are you really going to do nothing about Syl then?" the young boy asked. "Yeah, Grandpa, if we did something like that, then you would have already sent us back to the castle. It's not fair," the girl complained, sitting next to the boy. The old man stuffed his face with a fairly large chicken breast before putting it down and laughing. "You know I have bright plans for that boy." He continued to laugh. "Not fair." The girl sulked. "Why has Syl always been Grandpa's favorite?" "Come on now," the father said. "You know he has his problems. He was affected by the training worse than all of us. But at the same time, he showed better results than everyone here." "Your father's right," the mother added. "If Syl can return to what he once was, then perhaps he would lead the family one day." "PFT, you're right. If that crazy kid led this family, then we would all be doomed," the girl said. Suddenly, their meal was interrupted as a knock was heard at the door. "Come in," the old man shouted. A man walked in calmly, as if there was nothing to worry about at all. He was dressed in a nice suit and gave a quick bow before giving his report. "Sir, it seems like the island is about to be under attack," the man said. "Really, by who?" the old man replied. "It's True Dreams, sir, and he appears to have brought an army of over 1,000 men." The man replied. 1,000 men? He must be quite well known to gather that many. "Why have I never heard his name?" the old man asked. "He only recently joined one of the big families. I believe they now call it the Big Four," the father answered. "That's why you probably never had the chance to hear about him." The mother was shaking her head as she heard the news. "This stuff always happens. History has a pattern of repeating itself. As time goes on, our influence over them lessens and they forget about what happened before. Well, I guess it's time to remind them of who we are," the old man said as he stood up from his chair and wiped his face with a napkin. "Wait, Grandpa, you're going out there on your own?" the young girl said. "Isn't that a bit too much? You guys carry on enjoying your meal. It's been a long time since I've been able to do something like this, and who knows, maybe this Mr. True Dream is strong." The old man said, "Send 50 or so men to stall them at the beach, have them copy the earth ability before they go out, and bring out the chained. I will be needing them," the old man said with a smile. "As you wish, sir." True Dream and his men had landed on the beach, and they were currently waiting for all of the others to deboard. It was important for them to attack all together. Otherwise, it would be useless bringing this many people. Once everyone had gotten off the ships, True Dream himself remained at the back of the group with his 2 guards. Also, another group of around 10 people with portable teleporters too remained at the back of the group. "Begin the attack," the large man standing by True Dream's side shouted, and immediately all of the men stormed and started running on the sandy beach. At the same time, out from the trees, 50 men stood, all wearing the same type of armor at an equal distance from each other. Their armor was blue and silver in color, and they all looked like knights as their entire bodies and faces were covered from head to toe. At the same time, each one of them lifted their hands, and then a giant wall of sand was lifted, creating a giant wall in front of them. As they all pushed forward, the wall moved like some type of wave crashing into the army of people that were coming their way. The war had started. The wall had managed to deter a few people, trapping them or delaying them for a bit. But the others were able to avoid the attack by flying up in the air, shooting beams through the sand, or moving it away with their telekinesis power. "What is this? Are the Blade family just a bunch of Earth users? Then that makes them no different from the military. Why are they so special?" This should be easier than I thought. Jack said. One of the unique things about the True Dream family was that they all didn't carry a single power. Although they might have not been the top powers, it also meant that they didn't really have a weakness. For instance, the Greylash family always struggled to fight against the military's Earth power. Sometimes, abilities just had natural weaknesses, but it was impossible to come up with a counter against True Dream's army. The fight continued on, and it looked like somehow the army was being stalled, unable to advance. Although none of them were truly injured, the Blades had perfect teamwork when it came to using the Earth's ability, and they were on the defensive, as if they were stalling for something. This can't be everything you've got, Jack said. Bring it on. Back in the castle, the old man had finished putting on his beast gear. He wore a sleeveless chest piece to allow him free movement in the arm area, and normal trousers with crystallized boots. The chest piece itself also looked as if it was made from diamonds as well. It was unclear whether or not it was beast armor or something that was made just for show. He was inside an empty hall where there was nothing but a stone tablet. One that was similar to the one outside, only smaller in size. Then, the sounds of chains banging against the floor could be heard along with the sound of them rubbing against each other. I have brought the chain like you asked. As the old man turned around, he could see 5 people standing in front of him, all of them chained by their necks, arms, and legs. Their faces looked malnourished, as if they were given the bare minimum to survive, and they hadn't even been given clothes to cover themselves up in. Each of your families at one point or another tried to get rid of us, the old man said. Today, another fool has tried to do the same, and soon he will be joining all of you as well. The old man walked up to each one of them, touching them on the head. As he did this action, it looked as if they hadn't even noticed what was happening around them. Their eyes were as if they were already dead. Let's go deal with this fool. Finally, it looked like the 50 or so Earth users were tiring out. They couldn't hold back 1,000 or so powerful men forever. Although, Jack had never expected so little people to come face him. The problem with having a big army was not everyone was able to directly fight at the same time. Sometimes in war, strategy was needed and Jack had planned to do this. But after seeing how little people there were, he decided against it, and his plan seemed to be working as he began moving further up the island, and opposing men had started to move back. A special green beam came shooting out through one of the sand walls and managed to hit one of the Blade's knights on the shoulder. However, although the attack was powerful and managed to knock the knight over, the attack itself seemed to have bounced off, going into the air and causing no damage. On closer inspection, it looked as if a lot of the attacks were merely bouncing off the armor, and it was also the reason why they were able to last for so long. It turned out that the ordinary-looking knight armor wasn't so ordinary after all. Still, it didn't matter if the front row managed to move forward, because then suddenly several large blue thunderbolts came shooting outward. It moved so fast that no one was able to react to it in time. As it hit the first person, the electrical power seemed to pass onto the next until the whole front row had collapsed and fallen onto the floor. For a second, everyone on the battlefield had frozen. One of True Dream's men, who was just behind the front row, quickly knelt down as he went to check on his companion. He tried shaking him, hitting him, doing anything he could until he eventually pressed his ear against the person's chest. It stayed there for a while until, "He's dead," the man said. Then he turned and looked at all the others in the front row, and none of them were moving either. What is going on? Jack thought. Isn't that the Greylash's power, and a powerful one at that? Is the family head here? What are they doing on the island? But as the 50 or so men moved back into the jungle and headed back to the castle, a single large old man wearing a crystal chest piece and boots stepped out from the jungle and onto the sand. His right hand was completely covered in blue lightning racing up and down from his shoulders all the way to his fingertips. Knowing what just happened, many of the men were a little stiff and unwilling to move. There wasn't a single person on that island that was wearing armor below that of the king tier. Yet still, they had been taken out with a single attack. "My name is Hilston Blade. I'm the leader of the Blade family," the old man said. "The reason why I am telling you this is because you should all at least know the name of the person who will be taking your life." As Hilston, the old man stomped his foot in a certain direction. In the next instant, the sand that was below them had been hardened and turned into spikes, piercing many of them. With his other hand, he fired more lightning bolts. "What are you all doing? He's only one man. Kill him," True Dream shouted. Of course, the army had the confidence of having multiple people on their side, and some of them were filled with anger at their fallen comrades. As they came close to him, though, they could suddenly feel it getting hotter. An extreme heat was being emitted from the old man's body. Throwing out a kick with one of his legs, a vertical line of flames had come out of it, knocking all the people away who had come close. As for those in the sky, they continued to be shot down by thunderbolts. "What is this? How is this possible?" Jack said, as he continued to stay at the back. "He has earth power as strong as the military, fire power and lightning power from the other big families. The only one he is missing is from the Bree family. Not just that, this level of power is not normal. Nothing like this was recorded in the fight against the Dalki. How has a secret like this been kept for so long?" At this moment, Jack was starting to panic a little, but he still had plenty of men left alive, and as long as they continued to fight, he was sure that eventually all of the old man's MC cells would be used up. Every person in the world had a limit, and this included True Dream himself. The stronger the power that was stored inside him, the less powers he could store at a time. Roar! Suddenly, though, a loud roar that spread throughout the island was heard. It had interrupted Jack in the middle of his thoughts completely. "Ah, my little pet, it took you a while." The old man smiled. The sound of something heavy flapping was heard, and then a large shadow overcasting the whole beach was seen. As they all looked up in the sky, they could only see what could be described as a dra dragon. One of the men shouted. In the air, a large dragon the size of an aircraft was seen hovering about, brown and gold in color. Of course, dragons were nothing but mere legends and myths. This was something that only looked like a dragon. If it isn't a dragon, Jack thought, then that means it's a beast. As it landed on part of the beach, the whole ground slightly shook by its sheer weight, and anything that was below its feet was crushed. The men were now split between dealing with Hilston and the dragon. With a single sweep of its tail, men were sent flying back, knocked into the ocean. Then they all quickly realized something. None of their attack with weapons or abilities could do any damage to it at all. "Sir," the large man standing by Jack's side shouted. "We have to leave, I'm telling you. That's most likely a beast that is at the demon level. I have never seen something so powerful before, and I have no clue how he was able to keep one under his control." Then suddenly something had clicked in Jack's head. The man must have also been using the Bree family's power. That was how he was able to control the dragon. All four of the world's strongest powers were in a single man's hands. He didn't know how, but now he understood why the others were afraid to touch the Blade family. If this was the power of one person, imagine a whole army of people with the same set of powers. "Get the teleporters ready. We're getting out of here," Jack whispered under his breath, out of anger. Any one of the other big families could have said more than a warning. They could have at least hinted why the Blades were so powerful. Instead, they decided to keep it to themselves. Jack then noticed that some of the men who were carrying the teleporters had already opened it themselves and were starting to escape, heading back to the True Dream City. "Come on," Jack shouted. Quickly. Kenny quickly placed the teleport on the ground, and the three of them, without wasting any time, were ready to jump through. But before doing so, Jack had pulled out a small little controller and pressed a button. A beeping sound could be heard, coming from all of the teleporters they had brought with them. The three then quickly jumped into the teleporter, and soon after, each of the 10 teleporters exploded. "That bastard, he left us all here to die. He blew up all the teleporters. How are we meant to get away now?" The men shouted and screamed. They knew they were hopeless, and their family head that they had pledged loyalty to, without a second thought, had abandoned them all. "Curse you, Jack. I hope you die." As the man said that, he was lifted by the head and his body turned around. Looking behind Hilston, all that could be seen were the bodies of his dead comrades. Not a single person was now alive. "Don't worry. I shall grant your wish. We never let people get away," Hilston said, and with a single flick, the man's head twisted and his body fell to the floor. A few days later, a report had come in for the Supreme Commander, stating that True Dream City and all of its inhabitants had been wiped off of the face of the earth. As each person of the group stepped through the portal, They all held onto each other's shoulders firmly. They weren't quite sure how the square portals worked in relation to the circular portals. Was it like a station or a white portal where it was able to teleport you to a specific destination? Or was it like a red teleporter where it would teleport you within a mile or so of another one? Whatever the outcome was, the group didn't want to be separated from each other. So whatever they did while stepping through, they didn't let go. Standing at the front was Quinn, leading the charge if they were to head into any sort of danger, and at the back was Layla, their support, with CIA being a little bit in front of her. The warpy feeling they would feel when going through the teleporter was gone, and CIA had her eyes closed through the whole thing. Now they had finally made it to their destination, but when CIA opened her eyes, she could see nothing. It was complete darkness. "What's going on?" CIA said, being frightened, her voice shaking. She tightened her grip on the person in front of her, which was Vorden. "Ow! Your nails hurt," Vorden complained. "But I can't see anything," she cried. "And you think I can?" Vorden, too, was unable to see anything around him, but he was sure they were on the other side of the teleporter. "I expected the vampire world to be dark, but complete darkness? This doesn't make any sense," Logan said. "We're not outside, that's why," Quinn replied, being one of the few that could see. Layla and Quinn could both see quite well in the room. "Is it safe to act? Is there anything around us?" Logan asked, not wanting to make any sudden movements, although he was sure that if there was anything in the room with them, they would have been attacked by now due to CIA's and Vorden's back-and-forth chatter. The two of them still seemed to be bickering with each other now. "It's safe," Quinn replied. From underneath his suit, the spiders moved up to his face and started to form around his eyes, creating a type of night vision for Logan. Now he too could see clearly where they were. As soon as he realized what it was, the adrenaline started to run through his body. The whole room was covered with terminals, servers, and computers. Not just that, but where they stood there was a circular platform, and above them some type of contraption. In corners of the room, there were chemical gadgets and all sorts. But what was getting him excited more than anything was the layout of the room. If he was to move all of his research to a place like this, it would be exactly how he would organize it. "All right, everyone, don't panic. Just wait here for a moment," Logan said as he let go of who he was holding on to and started to investigate one of the terminals. There were many buttons that Logan had no clue what they did. He could have guessed, but if he did, it wouldn't exactly be accurate, so instead he placed his hand on the machine. Using his ability, he was able to directly communicate with it and give it orders. It was easy to tell which was the main terminal, and soon, several lights opened all over the room. "Ah!" Quinn flinched as the lights turned on, and Layla had done the same. "Could you warn us beforehand the next time?" Lights didn't hurt Quinn like the sunlight did, but sudden exposure from dark to light would startle him a bit. Now the whole group could see quite clearly that they seemed to be in some sort of science lab, although it also looked to be abandoned. Some of the computers and equipment had rusted, and there were cobwebs over everything as if they hadn't been touched in 100 years. "All right, let's try to spread out and look for clues or something," Logan said. "Now I must remind you, I said spread out, not split up. Got it? Stay in this room. We all know what happens to the first person who gets lost in a horror film, right? Is it really the right time to make that type of joke?" Layla asked. "When we're on another planet with a load of blood-sucking vampires." "I'll take your point on board," Logan replied. Logan had signaled for Quinn to come with him as he wanted to confirm something, while the others tried to find any details of where they were. The room was strange. There were several numbered doors on one side that didn't seem to open no matter what they did. Then there were two larger doors on each of the other sides, but none of them opened either. In a way, it seemed like they were trapped. There were no windows or anything similar that indicated where they were. "Would you mind using your system to try to figure out who made these items?" Logan asked, pointing forth at the weird claw-like object above the circle platform they had landed on. "Inspect. A teleporter created by Richard Eno." Quinn then went ahead and looked at a few other items, and although the system couldn't tell what most of them were, it did tell him they were all created by Richard Eno. "It's a teleporter," Quinn answered. "I thought as much," replied Logan. "At least now we have our way back. I can activate it whenever I want using the terminal over there. Although everything looks old and damaged in here, it's quite advanced. Some of this technology has only recently been introduced to our world." "Makes sense," Why it says they were all made by Richard Eno. Quinn said. A teleporter created by Richard Eno had led them to a laboratory created by him as well. It was clear it wasn't a coincidence. The question was, had what Feck said correct? Were they really now in the vampire world? Or had he made a mistake in just recognizing the teleporter as one of their own? They wouldn't know until they dug deeper. But other than that, the two of them started to think along the same lines. If they were in the vampire world, then what was Richard Eno doing here? There were a few possibilities. He was a vampire himself that later migrated to the human world, or a human who worked with the vampires, or was doing research on the vampires. All of these were a great possibility. Quinn, thank you, Logan said with a smile on his face. The two of them continued searching until they eventually reached another working terminal. This one had several different screens, 6 in total. Each screen seemed to be linked to a camera, and all of the rooms looked exactly the same. It was a square space with nothing inside. It reminded Quinn of certain mental asylums. Look at this, Quinn said, pointing to the screen. Logan had seen it too. The rooms had marks of blood all over them. The wall, ceilings, and floor. However, they were quite dark and looked like they had been there for a while. Maybe the rooms were used to run experiments of some sorts. Logan said, live subjects, human subjects, or other vampires? Well, if we can get to where those cameras are, I can actually check the blood. Maybe it will give us more answers to what type of place this is and who exactly Richard Eno was, because I don't know why, but this place is giving me the chills. While Layla and CIA were sticking to each other like glue, Vorden was looking at the wall with the several doors that had different numbers on them. There were 6 doors in total, each with a number on the front. He saw the girls looking at them earlier, but didn't really attempt to open them much. Feeling a little trapped, he was looking for an exit. As he approached the first door, he looked around to see if there was anything, but there really was nothing. At the same time, over to where Quinn and Logan were, they had just figured out something. Logan's hand was pressed up against the computer. It's telling me if we press this button, it will open a door to one of the rooms. Pressing the button, the door had opened, and a slight steamy sound was heard. When they looked up at where the door had opened from, they could see Vorden standing in front of an open door. Vorden could see a room in front of him, but was cautious about stepping in. But nearly in an instant, something had grabbed him, pulling him in. The doors soon after immediately shut again. Level 1 trial initiated. Open the door, Quinn shouted. I can't, Logan replied. I don't know what's happening. It's not listening. Vorden was trapped. Logan now had both of his hands pressed on the terminal, and his expression was one of struggle as he started to sweat a little. This was the first time Quinn had seen him panic like that. This only meant they were in a tough situation. I can't open the door, Logan shouted. It can understand me, and it's listening to me, but it's the first time a machine has ever been able to outright refuse my request like this. What's going on? He tried and tried again, but it was clear that right now there was nothing they could do to help Vorden. The two girls were not too far from the other doors themselves, and before anything could happen to them, Quinn quickly called them over. Come over here, Quinn shouted. We don't want any more surprises. All of them were now carefully watching one of the screens on the terminal that clearly showed Vorden in the room. Inside the room, Vorden had felt a very strong force pulling him by the back of his collar. He was practically chucked into the room, but as soon as the door closed, whatever that was pulling him had stopped. He immediately turned around, and as he did, he drew out both of the black and white blades, ready for anything. He had touched CIA before, so he also had her ability, but nothing else, and hers wasn't an offensive one in the first place, so the only thing he could rely on right now were the weapons. Now, standing in front of him, he could see one thing in the room. It was a robot, although not a humanoid-looking one, to say the least. Its upper body was like that of a human, having 2 hands and a chest frame with a head on top, but after that nothing else looked human. Where its head should have been, there was a single eye that looked like a pair of binoculars, and as for the legs, they were non-existent. Instead, it was a pair of triangle-shaped wheels with the tire being a band that would move along with the robot, emulating a treadmill. Since it was the only thing in the room, Vorden could only guess that it was this robot that had pulled him in. Although it looked weak, for a brief second he had felt its strength and was extremely cautious. As he backed up with his blades continually drawn, he didn't break eye contact even for a second. Then when he felt his back go up against the wall, Vorden lifted his foot and hit it as hard as he could with his heel. But there was no response. He could not move it at all. When Quinn had used his inspect skill, he had made a note that everything was made of Galthrium, which was why he hadn't tried to even attempt at breaking down any of the doors. And if Quinn couldn't do it, then Vorden definitely felt like he couldn't do it either. Trial 1 has been initiated, a voice said from the robot. A new participant has been detected. Please state your family number. Family number? Vorden said, looking confused. Does he mean my family name? Blade family, Vorden shouted. The robot took a few seconds to reply back. Error. Family number not found. Please try again. What do we do? Layla asked. Is he going to be okay? I'm not sure. Logan replied. Usually the group always went to him for answers, but with the way things were, he was a bit shell-shocked and had no idea how to proceed in this type of situation. The only thing I can guess is the robot said this is some type of trial, right? If he passes, maybe he can get out. But the machine, it's got a mind of its own. Usually my ability gives a life to things with a voice. It allows me to communicate and control them, but this machine, it already had its own voice. It was as if I was talking to another human, and it's refusing to do anything I ask it to do. Hearing this crisis and what the robot was saying, Quinn thought he might be the only one that would be able to help Vorden out of this trial. System, do you know anything about this place? What is it? I'm afraid not. This whole area is unfamiliar, and I've never seen anything like this before. The system replied. Quinn did remember stating that when the system was alive, he lived on Earth. So it would make sense to not know about this if the lab was relocated along with the vampires. You want a number right? Vorden said. Then my lucky number 77. Error. Family number not found. Please try again. Hearing the robot speak again, Quinn had an idea. If they were in the vampire world, then it must be related to the 13 vampire families. Vorden, pick a number between 1 and 13, he shouted. Hearing this, Vorden replied. 10. Please state your current rank. For the first time it had asked another question, and they were starting to make progress. Vampire, Quinn shouted, assuming it meant the different evolutions within the vampire circles. Vampire. The robot then started to move slightly. Out of its chest piece, a small door was opened and came out with what looked like a small tray. On it, a syringe with a green solution inside was displayed. Will you be taking the solution for this trial? The robot asked. This at least confirmed one thing to the others. The trial hadn't even begun yet. However, both Quinn and Logan were extremely interested in what was exactly in the strange green liquid. Perhaps it would give them answers to what this whole trial thing was about in the first place. Quinn, what do I say? You've been right about everything so far. Vorden said. But just to warn you, I have a feeling that if I say yes, there's a good chance he's going to force me to take it, or won't let me leave until I take the solution. It was clear by the question presented that this was an optional thing, and however much Quinn and Logan were interested in the syringe, they couldn't just use Vorden like a guinea pig, especially in extreme situations like this. Say no, Quinn shouted. No, Vorden replied, and the green solution went back into the strange robot. For the first time, the robot had moved from its place and went to the back of the room up against the wall. All of these actions, and the anticipation of what was about to happen next, was making not only Vorden nervous but the rest as well. Suddenly from above, a hole in the ceiling had appeared and then closed nearly just as quick. In the short time it had opened, something had fallen from the ceiling and made a loud thumping noise below. The first thing that came to Vorden's senses wasn't the appearance of what had fallen, but instead was the smell. He had wanted to immediately lift his shirt to cover his mouth, but was aware he couldn't. The smell was extremely bad. It smelled as if food had been left out for several days. Then when looking at what had dropped on the floor and where the smell had come from, he could see something had been wrapped up in a black rag, and on the outside of it was blood. Moving forward towards the black ragged item, Vorden pointed his black sword forward and reached out, pushing it with the side of his sword. The item had unwrapped itself from the rag and rolled out, revealing a severed arm. Immediately outside, CIA had to look away from the screen. She could take all of the things Layla had said, but seeing this, reality started to hit her about what type of place they were really in. Looking at the arm closer, Vorden could tell that it clearly wasn't a fresh one, for it was very pale in color and most of the inside looked rotten. After dealing with Peter, he had seen his fair share of fresh limbs that had been cut off. The trial will now begin. An announcement was made. Once again, one of the panels from the ceiling quickly opened, and this time on the other side of the room, something larger had fallen to the floor. It was curled up in a ball, but it looked to be human. Its bony spine could be seen, and it had no clothes, apart from a rag covering its privates. It was bald and almost gray in color. GRGRGR. GRGRGGR. GRGRG. Strange sounds could be heard coming from the figure, and Vorden proceeded to take a few steps back slowly, not wanting to make any noise. Slowly, the figure started to uncurl from its ball-like shape and stood on its 2 feet. It was tall, nearly 7 foot, and looked just like a human. However, it looked as if the creature was made of nothing but skin and bones, as in its ribcage, kneecaps, and several other areas could be seen clearly. Then when looking at its head, all that could be seen in its eyes was white. Grahai! The creature screamed, and as it opened its mouth wide, it revealed several razor-sharp teeth. Similar to a vampire, only every single one of its teeth was just as sharp. Quinn. The system said with horror in its voice. That's a Wendigo. Wendigo. It was a word that hadn't been mentioned in a while, and it had long shifted to the back of Quinn's mind. But suddenly all of the bad thoughts came rushing out his head as the system had said those words. The Wendigo was one of the evolutions a ghoul could evolve into. It was one of the options that Peter was able to evolve into, but instead, he turned into a wight. They were similar to wights with their amazing healing capabilities and strength, but at the same time vastly different. They showed no signs of intelligence and were unable to speak any words. They were detached from any emotion, only feeling one thing: hunger. Their hunger was far greater for flesh than a ghoul or a wight. While they did it out of survival, the Wendigos did it out of addiction. They were one of the very few evolutions that, when created, would be completely detached from their creator. They could be killed without any type of ramifications since the connection was no longer there, which made them perfect for testing situations like this. How strong is that thing? Quinn hurriedly asked the system, knowing full well Vorden didn't have many abilities. It's hard to tell just from looks. It's unlike a wight that gets stronger as its master gets stronger due to their connection. A Wendigo will only be as strong as its master was when it evolved, and then further gaining strength depending how much it has eaten, meaning it all depends on who created it and what happened after. With no clue on what to do or how to help, it looked like Vorden was on his own with this one. Stepping back, Vorden readied himself as the Wendigo started to move closer to the middle of the room. Once it goes for that arm, it will be my chance to attack, Vorden thought. The Wendigo carried on moving, and just as it reached the center, it didn't stop. It had completely stepped over the arm, ignoring it completely. In a second, all of Vorden's hopes were dashed. Of course, why would it go for that manky old thing when it has a freshly made burger right in front of it? Although it was large in size, perhaps it wasn't powerful, was Vorden's next thoughts, but suddenly, the Wendigo leaped towards Vorden with its long clawed arms. A roll was made at just the right time, dodging the attack, but as soon as he gained his footing, another swipe was made. Activating the white sword had allowed his body to move just a tad bit faster, and he had blocked the attack. Still, his whole arm was flung to the side. Quickly switching back to Black Blade, Vorden swung down hard at the second claw that was coming at him, managing to pin it and hit it to the ground. After practicing a little with the swords, Vorden realized that the pair had a very unique active skill, called yin and yang. Although both weapons had an active skill, while using one he was unable to use the other. When using the yang blade, his whole body got a speed boost, allowing him to use his sword skills and movements quickly. When using the yin blade, although his speed was back to normal, his power was greatly increased, and now he could tell he was able to match it in power. Still, there was one problem. The Wendigo was both faster and stronger than his natural self, making it difficult as he quickly needed to switch between the two as he did then. This was not only taxing for his mind but for his body as well. Lifting up the bolt blade, he quickly activated the white blade's power and started to move back, avoiding the next set of swipes that came his way. "Will you please give me a break?" he shouted, as the Wendigo carried on coming at him like a wild animal. There was only one thing left that he could do. He threw the black blade up in the air, while using the white blade to dodge the fast attacks. This meant that now his other hand was free, and he was able to use the spirit spear. Throwing it outward, it had stabbed the Wendigo in the stomach. It caused no pain, but that wasn't what Vorden was aiming for. The beast was greatly slowed, and it was at a speed that Vorden could now match. As he dodged the next set of attacks, he did a little spin and jumped for the black blade in the air. As soon as he did that, he activated the black blade's power and swung both blades right at the Wendigo's head, cutting it clean off. Its body quickly fell to the floor, and Vorden was huffing and panting greatly. His breathing was completely off, and his chest was hurting. The constant switching was also messing up with his body's natural rhythm, even causing his heart to misbeat in some areas, which was extremely dangerous. Any longer, and he could have been in serious trouble. I don't know if that boy is lucky or just has really good instincts. The system said, if he was to cut off any other part of the Wendigo's body, it would have almost healed on the spot, prolonging the fight. Cutting off the head is the only way to kill an undead. And you don't think he could have used that advice during the fight? Quinn said back, annoyed at the useless system. The fight was far too intense to allow any distractions. To tell him would have made his chances of survival decrease. While Vorden was still holding his chest in the white room, there was one thing he was sure about. If he needed to fight another one of those things, he wasn't sure if he could make it out alive. The robot once again started to move over to the Wendigo's body. It pointed one of its hands towards the body, and after a few seconds that hand had completely transformed into what looked like an oval-shaped cannon. Out from it, a large laser-like substance was shot. It wasn't harming the room in any way, but as it touched the body, parts of it quickly turned into ash. I guess I did the right thing to not try to fight that thing, Vorden thought as he gulped. As soon as the whole thing was turned to ash, like a vacuum, it started to suck up the ashes until there was no trace of the Wendigo left at all. The same process was then done with the rag and arm as well. The robot then moved back towards the center and finally made an announcement. Trial 1 has been completed. Would you like to continue on to the next one? The robot asked. Hell no. Vorden answered immediately. Get me out of here. Trial put on hold. Rewards shall be distributed. The robot once again opened up the tray on its body. Only this time, a red round-shaped pill was placed on it. The door had yet to open as Vorden looked around, and it looked like nothing would happen until he took the pill. Damn it, he thought as he picked up the pill, but at the same time the steam sound of the door opening behind him was heard. He only needed to take the reward and not actually consume it. He was never happier to leave such a place, and not waiting a second, bolted out of the room. When he left, the door behind closed once again. Vorden, are you hurt anywhere? Layla said, running up to him and looking around. I'm fine. That thing didn't even put a scratch on me. He replied. It did look like you were having a hard time in there, but I'm just happy I wasn't the one that caused your death. Logan said, do you mind if I take a look at what that robot gave you? Quinn asked. Vorden showed Quinn the small little red ball pill, and Quinn used his inspect skill to see what it was. Inspect, a special pill designed by Richard Eno. It will permanently increase one's strength. The description was short, and for a second Quinn had to read it again. He had never heard of any type of pill that could do such a thing before. But now what he was more worried about was if there were any side effects to such a thing, and if anyone could use it. Do you know what it is? Vorden asked. Kinda. Quinn replied. He decided it was time to explain further how his vampire powers worked. It didn't make sense to hide it any longer, and it was only making things more difficult. Just because they knew it was a system wouldn't change a thing. So he proceeded to tell them about how the system and his vampire powers worked. Now they all knew how Quinn was able to get stronger and why he had known so much information about things. The only thing he still kept a secret was the AI system related to the system. Even he didn't know much about it, and that would just complicate things. Anyway, when using my inspect skill, it says it can permanently increase a person's strength. Honestly, it sounds similar to when I consume an A type of blood, but I don't know if it will even work or if there are any side effects. Vorden thought about it for a while before giving his answer. I think it's best if I keep it for now. Maybe we will find more information on it, or when we get back, Logan can do more research. Vorden replied. Finding out about the effects of the pill had only made Quinn more interested in what the green liquid in the syringe was. "Do you think we could start the trial again?" Quinn asked. The others turned and suddenly looked at him like he was a type of madman, while Logan seemed to be the only one on the same wavelength. "Listen him out. Right now, we have no way of getting out of here," Logan said. "Even after using all these terminals, none of them open the doors out to this building. The only thing we have seen, though, is stranger things enter it through that room. Who knows if there are more creatures? We might even be in a large facility, but we still need to find a way to get out of here." Quinn also wanted to go and inspect the blood on the walls to see if it really was from a vampire or human. "I should be fine if it's like before and a Wendigo comes out. I'm confident I should be able to beat it fairly easily," Quinn replied. "And this time I'll stay in the room to see if there's anything I can do from the inside." The others didn't like it, but honestly there was no better option. Quinn prepared himself before entering and had chosen to go in the same door. The other doors were unknown variables. Most likely they all did the same thing, so they could run 6 different tests at the same time, but just to make sure it was safe, he chose to pick the same room. Here they at least knew a little bit of what could happen. "Open the door," Quinn said, and Logan pushed the button, allowing the door to open. As Quinn stepped into the room, the robot was already there, waiting for him. The door behind him then closed, and the robot started up once again. Resuming trials, Trial 2 will now begin. Entering the room, an unexpected message had occurred, but the door behind Quinn closed instantly. Judging from what happened with Vorden, now there was nothing he could do until the trial was complete. "Did that thing just say Trial 2? Layla asked. "And not Trial 1? They all thought the same thing. When entering, they thought the robot would recognize Quinn as a new subject, starting the process all over again from the beginning. Seeing that this wasn't the case, Logan naturally tried looking for answers. He placed his hand on the terminal, trying to communicate with it one more time. Machines, robots, they all followed a set of code, instructions, rules. However, he was only met with disappointment. Once again, reminded about how this strange computer seemed to have a mind of its own, doing things out of the ordinary. Quinn was unafraid, confident in his new skills and newfound power. He was able to get a good gauge on the Wendigo's strength watching Vorden, and if he was to face something a little harder, he knew he could get through it. Instead, multiple thoughts were running through his head, thinking about how they could get out of this place. What exactly was this place being used for? Looking at several of the blood marks, Quinn activated his level 3 inspect skill. A little window popped up above each one of the blood, giving out little bits of information. What had surprised him a little was how the blood marks were a mixture of human, as well as an unknown blood type. If he was to take a guess, the unknown blood type would belong to the vampires. They didn't have a set blood type like the humans did, but were still red in color all the same. Looking at the information, there wasn't much detail. Only what letter the blood type was. As for the ones he couldn't recognize, it just came up with several question marks. Before the trial would start, just like last time, the robot opened up its little tray from its chest piece and revealed the green solution. Inspect. A 10% increase in all stats. Once consumed. Will last 1 hour. Although the inspect skill once again couldn't tell where the green liquid had come from, seeing that message caused something to click in Quinn's head. The effect he was looking at now was the same effect when he had consumed the Dalki's green blood. It couldn't have been a coincidence that the liquid in the syringe was green in color, on top of having the same effect. There was a high chance that it was Dalki blood. Are the vampires and the Dalki really related after all? Quinn thought, but there was another confusing thing. The system had seen Dalki blood before, so why didn't it register it? Instead, it just came up with question marks. "Will you be taking the solution for this trial?" the robot said. "Yes," Quinn replied. "What are you doing, Quinn?" Vorden shouted, hearing his answer. "It's a risky thing, and maybe the robot won't start the trial until you actually take the thing. We can't guarantee it will be like the rewards." But Quinn had another theory. He was 90% sure this was exactly the same as the Dalki blood. When he consumed the blood before, there were no side effects and only positives. The way he was now, it was unlikely he would die by such a thing, and it was clear they were testing this out on vampires and possibly humans as well. They wouldn't just outright give them a solution that would kill them. Taking the syringe from the robot, he waited for some type of response. But nothing came, which meant Vorden was right. It wanted him to take the syringe before the trial would start. Sorry, Logan. Looks like I'm going to have to find some other way to get you this stuff. Digging the needle into the top of his thigh, the green liquid slowly injected into his body. A strange tingling sensation could be felt inside, traveling through. It started to spread all over, as if his body was on fire. It reminded him a little of the sensation he had felt at the hospital after consuming too many blood types. Finally, it stopped, but his body felt fresh. Status. After looking at his stats, a big smile appeared on his face. It was a temporary buff in strength, but since he had hit his limit, he wasn't too sure if it would have worked, but looked like the effects were still there as all of his stats had increased by 4. Trial 2 will now begin. The robot said as it moved back and allowed for 2 objects wrapped in rags to fall to the floor. There was no need to check what was underneath those rags, as they all already knew. Inspect. A severed human arm. Not too much of a surprise. Quinn said. Shortly after, 2 more larger objects had dropped from the ceiling, and they had already seen these once before. They were the Wendigos that Vorden had faced only moments ago. I'm glad I could leave the room, Vorden said. I would have been dead otherwise. It wasn't because Vorden was by any means weak. Just at this moment, he felt so, due to not having any of his abilities to copy from. He was thankful he had at least the 2 swords to defend himself. Where are those ugly things coming from? CIA asked. She has a point, Logan replied. How many of those Wendigos do they even have? Is there a breeding ground somewhere of some sorts, maybe a storage room where they are all kept in? On top of that, how long have they been up there, judging by the food they're dropping with it? It's been a long time since anyone has looked after this place. I hate to say it, but this facility might be incredibly dangerous. Once Quinn gets out of there, we should do our best to leave this place and stop playing this robot's silly games. I hate when I have no clue what's happening, and I can't even think straight. Logan's mind had been rattled by this whole experience. The excitement he initially had was now completely gone, and he just wanted to leave. Usually, machines, gadgets, and robots would be his safe haven, but right now he felt extremely uncomfortable. Perhaps at a later time, when they understood more, he would be happy to come back. Quinn stayed in the center, not moving from his spot. He had all of his beast gear on, and that included his new gauntlets. They had been equipped before he had even traveled through the teleporter in case they ran into trouble the second they arrived. The 2 Wendigos started to get up from their crouch positions, and in a split second both of them leapt straight forward towards Quinn. Your aggressive nature makes you all a little bit too predictable. They were both quite a bit taller than himself, but when they leapt they were slightly crouched like a beast, making them level with his shoulders. At just the right time, Quinn jumped up, avoiding a pair of long arms and kicking the others away. Now being slightly above them, on the way back down he grabbed them both on top of their heads. He felt like he could have quite easily dealt with them, and if he wanted to he could have crushed their skulls. But there was something he was eager to try out. Activate skill. Thundercoat. Quickly, the blue lines running through his gauntlets started to light up. They followed from his elbow all the way down to his fingertips. In nearly an instant, a blue electric discharge came out, covering both of his gauntlets. The power was passed through onto the Wendigos' shocking fear bodies. They immediately fell to the floor and started to shake uncontrollably. It managed to stop them completely. They were quite physically powerful, but the attack doesn't seem to have done much damage. It was a good opponent to test the active skill on, and so far Quinn was pleased, but still, he had no idea how this would affect even stronger opponents. Using all of his strength, Quinn stomped on the first Wendigo's head, splattering it to pieces. It was done so easily it was as if there was no skull at all. He then did the same to the other while it continued to shake about on the floor, and now their bodies were no longer moving. CIA, seeing how easy and quick Quinn had dealt with the things, turned her head to look at Vorden. Was he just weak? She thought, but then remembered how quick she could see him moving on the camera. That couldn't be the case, and he had even used her spirit blade. It just meant the person she was watching now was incredibly strong. I'm glad he's on our side. I would hate to be his enemy. A Wendigo has been killed. 400 EXP gained. 400 EXP gained. First time kill bonus reward. 4,000 EXP. Current EXP. 29690/51200. There's still a long way to go, they're just not strong enough. Quinn thought. After the robot had finished cleaning up the mess, it did the same as last time. Trial 2 completed. Please take your rewards. This time, 2 red pills were displayed. One was the exact same one that Vorden had. As for the other, it looked the same but gave a different effect. Will permanently increase the user's agility. After taking the 2 pills, the robot started again. Would you like to continue on to Trial 3? Although Quinn thought it might be a good idea to continue on playing around with the trials, he didn't know how long they would go on for, and if it would even result in them leaving the place. No, Quinn replied. The door had instantly opened, and in that brief second, Quinn had activated his boots, giving him a 10% increase in speed. With his stat increase, the strange green substance, and his boots' active skill, his speed was now beyond 50 points, taking him to the next level. In the short time, using all his strength, he picked up the strange-looking robot and ran as fast as he could out of the door. As if everything was playing in slow motion in his eyes, he could see the door already closing, but it was far too slow for him now. As the door shut behind him, Quinn had the robot safely placed above his head. This should be a nice little gift, huh? Quinn said. As soon as Quinn had come out with the robot above his head, the others immediately started to duck behind terminals, tables, and desks. They had all seen through the video feed what it had done to the Wendigo's body, and they were all starting to panic, thinking the robot might suddenly go on some sort of rampage. But, after waiting a few seconds, they started to lift their hands off their ears and peek over the objects they were hiding behind. What are you all so worried about? Quinn said, with the robot now standing upright by his side. Looking at the robot closely, previously its single eye on its head would be glowing red, especially when it was giving orders, but now they could see no such thing. Although Quinn wasn't 100% sure, as soon as he said no, he could see the robot's eye color dim as it deactivated itself. Even if it did start firing lasers everywhere, Quinn was hoping he could overpower it, moving its arm and pointing the laser at one of the doors, making their exit out of the place. In all honesty, he was a bit disappointed that it didn't start shooting lasers because they still had the overall problem and struggle of finding a way out of the place. What were you thinking? Layla said. Did you want to keep the robot as a pet or something? Layla's heart was still beating fast, seeing as she was a little startled. Ever since her change, her emotions were a little higher strung than usual, but being in the strange lab didn't exactly help things either. Now instead, it looked like CIA was the one calming her down and giving her comfort, telling her to take deep breaths in and out slowly. There's a few reasons actually, Quinn replied. First off, I was hoping to use the robot's laser to try and fry the door open. I know it probably won't work, but we don't have many options. The second reason is we have no clue how many trials they are, nor if it will even lead us to getting out of this place to begin with. What we do know is Mr. Tin here, Quinn said, slapping him on the head, has been giving us all the rewards, and I thought it would be a nice possible shortcut to the end. Maybe the last reward is a key. Approaching the robot, Logan was greatly interested in it. He got Quinn to lay it on the floor and stand nearby in case there were any sudden surprises. As he went to place his hand on top of it, Logan hesitated for a second. The fear had gotten to him, the fear of failure. Perhaps, just like with everything else, there was nothing he could do. His hand stayed a few inches above the robot's chest, shaking, and Quinn noticed this too. What's wrong? Quinn asked. What if I can't do it? Logan said. Does that matter? It's not like any of us could do better. Don't you want to be better than Richard Eno? Quinn asked. He had been around Logan long enough to know what spurred him on, and he needed a push to get back to his usual self. Well, here's your chance, right? Everything in here belongs to him, and it seems like you've already given up. You never thought it would be so easy as to just use your ability to beat him, right? Thinking about Quinn's words, he knew he was right. For the first time ever, his ability hadn't worked on a machine, and it had completely startled him. But others who didn't have this ability of his still went on to do great things in the past. Was he nothing without his ability? No, he wasn't that type of person. Placing his hand on the metal robot, he waited, but just like the terminal, he was unable to communicate with it. Although this time there seemed to be no response at all. If he couldn't control it, then there were other ways of doing things. Using his spiders, they started to form Logan's tool glove over his hand, and he got to work immediately, determined to prove that he could do something. If Richard Eno was able to make something like this, then I should at least be able to dismantle it. Logan thought. Unlike the terminal, if they were to dismantle it, it would give no such rewards. The software was the brains behind the operation on that. But here Logan could do work with his own two hands. The others waited patiently, not wanting to make a sound so as to not disturb him, until finally. Click. After a few minutes, a clicking sound was heard and the front panel had finally opened. Inside, 5 different compartments could be seen. Slowly, one by one, Logan took them out and laid them on the floor next to the robot for the others to see. He had separated the items on the floor according to how he had found them inside the robot. The first one was a single syringe and nothing more. The second compartment was completely empty. The third held a syringe and 3 red balls. The fourth, a syringe and 5 red balls, and the fifth, another syringe with 5 red balls. Using his inspect skill, Quinn could tell the balls were the same as before, only some of them gave different effects. One of the new ones he could see was a way to permanently increase one's stamina. The more he thought about what the balls were able to do, the more Quinn started to relate it all back to his system. The balls were essentially a replacement for his different blood types. As for the syringes, they all had the same effect as the one Quinn had taken at the beginning of the second trial. I think it's safe to assume why the second compartment was empty. That's probably due to Quinn completing the second trial. The other compartments must be the rewards for the next 3 trials, making 5 in total. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to help us with our problem of getting out of here. Logan said, "But Quinn, are all these balls the same as the others?" "Kind of," Quinn replied. "Some of them have different effects. Speed, strength, and stamina. As for the green liquid effect, it's only temporary. It allows for a power boost for an hour. Although I have to be honest with you guys, the system revolves around me. Everything it tells me is based on what effect it will give me if I consume it. So I don't know if it will have the same effect on you, or if there are even side effects for you guys." Grabbing the items, Logan placed it into one of the many special boxes he had brought along with him from his bag, and placed them all inside for safekeeping. "I think it's best if I take these for now. At some point, perhaps I can look into how it will affect us. By that I mean the humans of the group. Sorry, Layla," he said, looking at the small little bumps on her head. Unsure whether or not the rewards were worth it or Quinn's quick thinking plan had helped them. Once again, they were stuck in the same scenario as before. Looking ahead at the 6 different doors, he started to wonder if there was a similar robot behind each of them. The Wendigo had given him a good amount of EXP, and if he was to complete the trials fairly this time, in the other rooms in turn, they would get the other rewards. They would give more green liquid as well as what Quinn would now refer to as blood pills. In a tough pinch, the green liquid could be the turning point on whether or not he would win a fight in the future. Perhaps completing the trial and killing all the Wendigos would be enough EXP to even level him up to the next stage. Trials 1 and 2 were quite easy. I wonder if Trial 3 would be similar. Would they all just increase the amount of creatures I have to face? Quinn thought. If the 5th trial was just defeating 5 at one go, it would be a pretty easy job with his shadow and blood abilities to deal with them. Somewhere above the laboratory was a large, dark space. Not a single light source could be seen, but the sound of growling and howls was constantly heard. Inside, the Wendigos would consistently and aimlessly wander around. Some didn't move at all, while others bumped into each other as they walked past. Aggressive creatures, but no need to be aggressive towards each other. But in the corner of the large, dark space, a pile of pale white bodies could be seen. However, they weren't human bodies. On top of the mound, it was too dark to see, but a figure sat on top of it. The sound of chewing could be heard. Then suddenly the chewing had stopped, and another body was thrown onto the pile. One of the Wendigos, who continued to walk around, started to hover near the large pile of bodies. A few seconds later, it had disappeared, and the chewing noises could be heard again. After endless searching, it really did seem like there was no way out of the place. This wasn't what they were expecting at all, to say the least, when they thought of the vampire world. All being stuck in a strange lab. Is this how we're going to die? CIA thought, as she was wondering what she had gotten herself into. But just as she felt like she was about to sob her heart out, the lump in her throat had gone away, and a refreshing feeling had entered her mind. "You okay?" Layla asked with a smile. Yes, actually much better, CIA replied. Frustrated by the whole thing, Vorden was standing by one of the larger doors that was about as large as a van. He pulled out his black blade and started swinging at it, as hard as he could. He knew it was useless, but they didn't even know how long they had been in the room for, and the fear of the unknown of what was going to happen to them started to settle in. Just asterisk bang open, asterisk bang this, asterisk bang door, he shouted. Just moments later, after Vorden stopped hitting the door, several groans could be heard from above, screams from creatures, and a bit of dirt from the ceiling fell. They all stood in silence waiting for it to pass, and eventually, the groans stopped. Maybe it's not a good idea to do that when there's a bunch of Wendigos above us, Layla said. The reason why they were all slightly frozen, though, was because of the amount of noise they could hear. It sounded as if 100 people were up there at once, and the structure they were in looked well built. Yet for a brief second, they could hear the sounds of all their footsteps from above. Okay, that's it, Quinn said. We need to do something. How about I start going into the other rooms? Maybe the trial will start again, and we might find something different in the other rooms that can get us out of here. Do you think that's a good idea? Vorden replied. What if the trials don't restart, and when you enter the other room, it starts from number 3, and we don't even know if that will even happen? This place looks like it was used for experiments, right? Well, what do you do in an experiment to make it a fair test? You make them all the same, but change one factor, not knowing what that factor could be dangerous. Well, it's either that or we stay here until we die, so I see we have no other choice. Quinn replied. You have a point, said Vorden. With nothing else to do, Quinn headed over and stood in front of the second door. The others felt a little guilty that Quinn was put in this situation, but it was clear he was the strongest one out of them. As Logan stood by the terminal, he was ready to press the button to open the door to the second room, but as soon as his finger crazed over the button, his ability started communicating with the terminal again. It still wasn't talking to him, but he could feel it. They had angered the computer greatly, and it wasn't going to treat them nicely if Quinn went into that room. Maybe it's not a good idea after all, Logan said, lifting his hand off the button. It's hard to explain, but my ability showed me something. The way the machine is acting, it's like it's human. I think it was annoyed by Quinn's actions from earlier. I don't think it will be putting you through normal trials anymore if you go in there. It might even override me here, shutting you in and never opening the door again. This was something Quinn didn't like the sound of. Truthfully, he assumed that completing the trials wouldn't open the side doors and only amount to more rewards and the possibility of leveling up. However, the risk and reward just weren't worth it. Walking around, Quinn stood back outside door 1 and started to think. Those Wendigos came from above, right? And we all heard them up there. Which means they have to be coming from somewhere, right? You can't be thinking of trying to go up there? Layla asked. Did you hear how many they were? Even for you, that would just mean death. Quinn shook his head. Not up there, but I was thinking. Every time a trial started, what happened right at the beginning, it would always drop a severed arm. Only then would it drop the Wendigos in after. Which means the human body parts and the Wendigos are stored in 2 different places. I mean, if they were to put it together, all the food would be gone. Maybe if we go up there, we can find something. And how do we get in the room? CIA asked. I have an idea. Once again, with his finger hovered over the button, Logan was ready, and so was Quinn by the original first door. While Vorden stood by the robot, Logan had said it had been deactivated by himself, but it was better to be extra safe. The two gave a nod to each other, signaling they were ready. As Logan pushed the button, the door opened up again. Then, instead of entering the room, Quinn decided to stand directly in front of its path. A short time had passed, and the door tried to close. Maybe I can't break the doors, but I'm pretty sure I'm strong enough to stop you from closing. Using both hands, Quinn pushed against the door, pushing it back into its slot. It wasn't as hard as he thought, but at the same time, it wasn't easy either. Can you hold it? Vorden asked. Yeah, I should be good for a good while, Quinn replied. All of the group apart from Logan then ventured into the room from before. The robot hadn't activated, and a trial hadn't started like the times before, which was a good sign. Just in case anything happened, though, Logan would stay outside. Do you remember where the arm dropped from? Layla asked. It was right here, Vorden said, as he went ahead and tried to cut the square ceiling directly above where the arm had fallen from. At first nothing happened, but the ceiling panel had slightly moved. He tried again a few times and then success. The panel had been slashed in half, falling to the floor, but with it, small amounts of blood had dripped down and fell onto Vorden's cheeks. Yuck, he shouted. The group allowed the blood to drip from above a little, and when it finally seemed to stop, they looked up. To them it just looked like a dark hole, unsure whether it led to a room or how the arm even came down to them in the first place. How did you know the ceiling might not be made of glathrium? Layla asked Quinn, who was still holding the door back. It was when Vorden did his little act earlier. Glathrium is extremely rare and hard to mold, so some of it might not be pure like the doors. But when part of the ceiling had crumbled and fell into the room earlier, I checked it out with my inspect skill. Turns out it wasn't 100% glathrium. The problem was I wasn't going to go and start blasting the ceiling, possibly dropping hundreds of Wendigos on top of us. If the ceiling in there wasn't pure glathrium, then maybe here it wasn't either. They all continued to look at the hole above them, each just staring at it, wondering what was up there. Can someone please hurry up and go in? Quinn complained. This is tiring, you know. Oh, I thought Vorden was going to go in. Layla said. So did I. CIA replied. Why me? Aren't you the one with the magic powers now? Vorden replied. An angry look appeared on her face, but she didn't say anything, and CIA too was staring Vorden down. Fine, Vorden replied as he looked up at the hole in the ceiling. Here we go. The ceiling from the floor wasn't too high. However, it was lucky that Vorden was quite a tall person. Standing up, he was able to reach the ceiling if he raised his hand with his sword. With a little jump, he could perform an attack while doing so as well. This was how he was able to break the panel in the first place. Still, he needed a little assistance from the two girls to push him up so he could pull himself inside. Since both Logan and Quinn were busy right now, that only left him with two options. Right now, Vorden was standing on top of the girls carefully. He had one foot on the top of each shoulder, like a cheerleader, spreading his weight. Vorden, how much do you weigh? Layla said, struggling. I never thought small girls like us would be doing this. Shouldn't it be the other way round? CIA said as she tried her best to keep still, otherwise he would be off balance. Will you two stop complaining? Vorden snapped back at them. This is the least you can do, unless you guys want to stick your head first into a creepy dark hole that you just saw a couple of severed arms fall from. Oh, and let's not forget the human-eating flesh monsters that are above us as well. From that point onward, the two girls stopped complaining. Vorden carefully first placed his hand onto one of the other panels for a few seconds and then brought it back down again. Okay, nothing but my fingers, that's good, right? He then did the same thing again, but tried to yank on the panel quite hard, seeing if it would fall when he pulled himself up. But it was pretty sturdy, and he decided it should be safe. The girls watching this wanted to say something because they felt like Vorden was taking extra long and wasn't sure if he was now doing this on purpose as a form of payback. Finally, he took the plunge and using both hands, pulled his body up. He was unsure whether or not he would be able to fully stand, so he stayed low for a little bit. But when he looked ahead, there were a few light sources here and there across the walls, all blue in color. They allowed him to see the whole area he was in. Standing up fully on his two legs, he quickly realized he was in some type of cave. Above it was quite a large empty space, and on the side, the small lights could be seen. Looking at the hole he had just climbed up from, there was a conveyor belt leading up to it, and the small lights also went along the way, leading to a different area of the cave. When turning around, the conveyor belt looked as it pathed off into the first room. It then carried on going into what looked like a hole which Vorden would have only been able to fit through if he was to crawl. Perhaps they lead to the other rooms? Maybe all the trials are the same in each room, the changing factor being the participants themselves. Looking in front at the other path, it looked a lot more friendly, as there was no need for Vorden to crouch, and he could simply just walk. But the conveyor belt took a turn around the corner where he was unable to see anything up ahead. Are we underground? I don't like it. I remember what happened last time we were underground, Vorden said while drawing both of his blades, ready for any type of beast to come running around the corner any second now. What do you see? Layla shouted, When the noise entered through the hole, it started to echo and bounce off the cave walls. Putting his head back through the hole, from the side the conveyor belt wasn't on, Vorden replied, "I think we're underground. It looks like some type of cave, but there's a pathway that's been built. I'll go ahead and follow it to see if there's a way out, or if a way back around to you guys. If there is one, I'll come back." The reason why Vorden wasn't too afraid to travel on his own was because, like Quinn said, it seemed like this part of the cave was perhaps separated from the others, due to placing the food in one area and the rest in another. Also, when Layla shouted, if there was anything here, her voice would have caused some reaction from the creatures. After all, they had sensitive hearing, at least the Wendigos did. But Vorden didn't want to think about anything else that was hiding up here. Following the conveyor belt, Vorden could see that there were blood marks on it. He carried on, until eventually the cave led him around the corner, and then finally, he had entered an even bigger cavern. This one was a huge, empty site, and it looked like another facility altogether was situated in there. If he continued on to follow the conveyor belt, it eventually led him inside the large warehouse-looking factory. There were now two pathways. Vorden could either choose to go around the warehouse or go through it. When trying to look closer to see where they both went, it seemed like the final destination was the same. The one thing that was on the plus side was that, just like in the science lab, the entire area looked to have been untouched for many years. The metal was slightly rusted and covered in dust and dirt from the ceiling above. "What are you doing, you wimp?" Ratton suddenly said. "Were you just about to go around the warehouse? Go look inside. You might find something useful." Vorden wasn't stupid. He knew what had come out of the conveyor belt, or most likely, he knew what was inside the warehouse as well. However, Ratton did bring up a good point, and perhaps it would help them leave this place. Walking back, he went to the double doors on the side of the warehouse and braced himself as he walked in. In an instant, a strange smell had hit him in the face, and it reminded him of when he was in the trial room on his own. Not only that, but the smell was around 10 times stronger. Afraid to even think, he first looked straight ahead, and all he could see was a path leading to the other door. From the corner of his eyes, he could see several terminals along the side, and then another path leading to somewhere else. He couldn't help it, and his urges got the better of him as he turned his head to look to his left, to see what looked like a complete horror show. In what looked like a large square glass container, around 100 bodies could be seen piled on top of each other. Everything was intact, but it was clear that they were dead. But how long for? He had no idea. How many people did they kill? Vorden thought. "I think you're thinking about the wrong thing." Ratton interrupted. "If there's that many bodies, then that's a lot of food. And if they need that much food, how many Wendigos do you think they have?" Suddenly, a mechanical sound could be heard, as if the machines in the room had just turned on. "What's going on?" Inside the large glass container, suspended above, was a claw-like machine. It went down into the pile of bodies and picked one up. Shortly after, it moved to beyond where he could see and dropped the body. "I don't like what's happening." Back inside the first trial room, everyone was waiting patiently for Vorden to return back with some good news. Him taking a long time was possibly a good sign, but at the same time they could take it as a bad sign as well. Then, while Quinn was at the door, it no longer kept on trying to push back against him. For a second he thought maybe it had given up. Then the next thing he knew, the door came out again trying to slam into him. But he was ready and fast at pushing it back again. The door continually kept on doing this, as if it was trying to ram Quinn of the thing. "This thing is clearly annoying. What the hell is it doing?" Quinn said, as it was starting to hurt a little, as the door constantly hit him. The two girls started to laugh at the sight, as it did look a little comical. If it was any type of situation, then perhaps Quinn would have complained, but he thought it was nice to see them laugh, even if it was at his own expense. It had been tough for all of them since they had arrived in this place. Asterisk thud. The loud sound of something dropping and hitting the floor caused the girls to immediately stop. It was covered in the usual black rag that they had seen on the screen before. Usually, what followed after the hand was the Wendigos. 3 panels from above had opened, and at the same time, 3 of them dropped from the ceiling. "I hate it when I'm right," Quinn said. Seeing the strange claw machine move, Vorden had a good guess of what was going on. He was in a state of panic. Should I go back and try to help the others? Maybe it's best if I try to find an exit quickly. After all, we could be going up against a whole army. It was hard for him to make up his mind. Quinn, you can protect them all, right? Vorden could trust Quinn's strength, especially after seeing how easily he dealt with 2 of them. Even if a whole army came down, most likely Quinn and the others were able to hold them off for some time. What was important was to try to find a way out of here, so that they didn't have to risk fighting anymore. And with that thought, Vorden dashed towards the other door, exiting out of the warehouse. He carried heading down one of the paths, hoping to find a way out, now moving faster than ever. Still needing to hold the door back, Quinn did the only thing he could as soon as he saw one of the Wendigos. With one hand, he held the door as it continued to barge him, and with the other, he swung it out, performing a blood swipe. However, just as he did, the door had barged into him once again, and had slightly nudged him, causing his aim to be slightly off. As one of the Wendigos stood up, the swipe continued and had completely cut through one of the Wendigos' arms, causing it to fall to the floor. It screamed and howled in pain. Its attention had moved from the girls and was now focusing on Quinn. Unable to move his hand freely while giving it the most power possible, it caused his attack to be weaker than usual. Still, it seemed like it was strong enough to deal with the Wendigos. It only took a few seconds before the Wendigos' arm had regrown. It was an amazing sight, and Quinn thought that it was probably faster than Peter's regenerative healing speed. He didn't have time to admire that, though. "Girls, move!" Quinn shouted, as he could see the 2 girls stuck in the middle, about to be trapped from both sides by the other 2 that had fallen, but he was more concerned about something else right now. Now, using both hands to hold the door back, he wasn't being nudged as much. Then he threw out a front kick as straight as he could. Blood crescent kick. A vertical line came out from his leg that was too fast for the Wendigo to react, and had completely sliced the creature in half. The attack didn't stop there and continued moving forward, right where the 2 girls were moving nervously. As soon as they moved, though, one of the Wendigos had come quicker than the other. Their movements caused it to leap at the 2 girls that were coming their way. Holding out her hands, Layla did the only thing she could do. CIA was shaking with fear. She was scared before, but now with the creatures directly in front of her, she didn't know how to act, but this was perfect. Layla could use this energy and was now confident in her own skills. She had tried multiple times to use the ability on her own, but still, she hadn't gotten the hang of it where she could do so on demand. Often it would be a 50-50 chance, but with CIA along for the ride, it didn't matter. Spiritual chain. Layla shouted, and the black ball came outward. It hit the Wendigo, dead on in midair, and black chains wrapped around the beast in less than a second. At the same time, Quinn's attack that had carried on going forward had arrived at the perfect time, slicing the creature's head off. Now there was only one Wendigo left, and the person closest to it was CIA. After Layla had used her ability, the fear that had taken over her body and heart started to settle. She didn't know why, but now she was a lot more calm and knew what she needed to do. She started to throw multiple spears into the Wendigo, slowing it down as much as possible. Layla then turned and drew her bow, but before she could even fire, the Wendigo's head was already cut off and it had fallen to the floor. All she could see was Quinn smiling behind it, still being pushed by the door. Asterisk clang, asterisk clang, asterisk clang. "Hey, can you hear me?" Vorden shouted. Logan, who had stayed by the terminal, could hear a voice from his side. He then noticed that it was coming from the large door on his left. It was one of the exits from the lab. "Vorden," Logan said, "I didn't find an exit yet, but I found a way to this door. There are too many tunnels. I think it's best if we go together. Especially if the exit from this place leads to here, anyway." Vorden continued to say. As Logan was just about to reply, the steam sound used to open the doors had interrupted him. As he turned his head, he could see that all of the other doors to the 6 other rooms had opened. "This can't be good," Logan said. "Vorden, stay there. We'll come meet you." While running to the first room, Logan could see multiple things that were dropping in from the ceiling into the other rooms. They could no longer stay here, and he was unsure if they could even come back. It was best if they left now. "We have to go. Start climbing through the hole. They're coming down from the other rooms," Logan said as soon as he entered the room. Quinn then let go of the door, and it had completely stopped trying to hit him. Listening to Logan, Quinn quickly threw the girls up into the hole one by one, and then Logan shortly after. He could now see the Wendigos enter the large lab that they were in. Using all his strength, he was able to jump quite high and grab onto the hole, pulling himself up. "Come on, follow me," Layla said, as she was able to see better than the others. The lights certainly helped, but without Layla or Quinn leading the way, they would have probably crashed or bumped into some of the walls on the way. Although Quinn was faster than everyone else, he chose to stay at the back of the group in case any of the Wendigos had caught up with them. But just as they were about to turn around the corner, he looked back, allowing the others to continue running ahead. "They are not following us. Can they not jump up that high?" Quinn thought, but that couldn't be it. The creatures were tall and powerful. Something like his should have been easy for them. With nothing following them, Quinn went to try and catch up with the others. When he managed to see the large warehouse, he entered the double doors, only to see the group staring at something. When he turned his head, he noticed they were looking at the glass container with all the dead bodies. "Come on," Logan said. "We can't do anything about it now. We can think about it later. Let's keep moving or they might catch up soon." Quinn knew that wasn't true, but he too was unsure what they were planning and wanted to leave as soon as possible. There was only one tunnel from the warehouse, and it eventually started to head downwards until finally it opened up to a large space again. Now there were a few different tunnels splitting into multiple directions, each lit up with small blue lights along the way. The blue lights, and being underground, started to remind Quinn of the orange portal planet, when he had discovered the blue crystals in the cave as well. "You guys made it," Vorden said, leaving the metal shutter-type door and coming over to the group. "I could hear some noises coming from the other side, and I was starting to get a little worried," he said, laughing nervously. "Where do we go now?" Layla asked. There were 3 tunnels in total, one of which they had come from, and then 2 situated opposite the large metal shutter door. "I don't know," Vorden replied. "That's why I thought it was best to call you guys. If this is the exit from the lab anyway, even if you managed to open the doors, we would just be in the same position." Just as they were about to decide where to go, a loud bang was heard. Asterisk bang, asterisk bang, asterisk bang bang. The banging was coming from the metal shutter, and it repeated itself multiple times, as if a horde of zombies was banging up against the shutter. "They can't get through that, right?" Layla asked. "It's made of glathrium." Quinn certainly knew he didn't have the strength to break it, so he was quite confident. But then all the little bangs suddenly stopped. Asterisk bang. A loud noise was made, bigger than all of the others before it. It had startled the group. When looking up at the shutter, a large dent could be seen. Whatever had made that impact, it clearly wasn't one of the Wendigos, and they didn't want to stay and find out either. The huge dent that could be seen in the shutter was worrying everyone. It was clear that it was the doing of a single creature, and the sudden stop in the Wendigos' noise also made it apparent there was something far stronger than them in there. "Over here," Quinn said, deciding that they had to make a choice, left tunnel or right tunnel. No one cared as long as they could get away from whatever was about to chase after them. The entire group had entered the left tunnel, but none of them was as fast as Quinn himself, and he was trying his best to hold back his speed for the others. The only one that could keep up a little was Vorden. He always had been naturally athletic, and it seemed like his long legs helped him greatly in this situation. Then CIA, who was falling behind the others, suddenly felt a rock caught on her foot as she tripped and fell to the ground. "Come on," Layla said, lending a hand, picking her up off the ground. The flooring wasn't exactly smooth. Although the cave looked to be carved and man-made, it was left untreated, and there were now many bumps that had grown from below and above. It made it even harder by the fact of how dark it was. As they continued to run, it seemed like there was no end in sight. And then Quinn had picked up something with his sensitive ears. Although they had run a good distance away from the shutter, in the cave-like area, loud sounds would often bounce, and his ears were highly sensitive. A loud scraping noise was heard, followed by a few clangs. It was clear that the creature had managed to break the glathrium door somehow. Straight after that, cries and shrieks followed, and the sound of hundreds of footsteps were heard coming after them. The Wendigos were now free. Knowing this, Quinn didn't want to frighten the others even more. If they focused just on running, perhaps they would fumble and fall even more now. Come on, keep going, I can see something up ahead. Quinn lied, but it was the encouragement they needed. The sound of the Wendigos' footsteps were getting louder by the second. Quinn knew they were faster than them, and it would only be a matter of time before they caught up. Just in case, he decided to slow down and head to the back of the group. Logan had made a note of this move, and he had a good idea of what was going on. After running a bit further, there still was nothing ahead, and the others could only guess what Quinn had said wasn't true. Then a few moments later, the sound coming down from the tunnel could be heard by everyone. Still, it was hard to tell how close they truly were. Just keep going, don't look back. If they come near, I'll deal with them. Quinn shouted, and the others did just that. Occasionally turning around once in a while, Quinn was waiting to see them pop into his view. He turned and ran. He kept on running, and then they finally came. There were too many to count, and only so many could fit through the tunnel at one time. He had no clue how many were in the Horde. What surprised him most, though, was that the Wendigos were even climbing up on the sides and the ceiling of the tunnel on all fours. There was one in front of the entire pack that was above. Seeing this, Quinn paused and threw a blood swipe directly above, slicing off its legs and causing it to fall to the ground. Its legs soon started to heal, but that didn't matter, for the others behind continued to run forward, trampling over the fallen creature. Get back! Quinn shouted as he threw out a few crescent blood kicks, but the distance between them was still great, and somehow most of them managed to move by scaling the walls in certain areas. If the attack did hit, they were able to stop it from hitting their vitals. I see something, Layla said. Up ahead. It looked like a true exit really was in sight for them all. Hoping to slow them down, Quinn directed one of his blood swipes at the cave wall, hoping it would collapse. Even though it had caused a deep groove, it didn't have much effect due to how thick the cave walls were. Finally, as Vorden rushed ahead towards the tunnel exit, he thought perhaps there would be freedom, but instead he paused for a brief second looking around him. The tunnel had led to what could only be described as a bridge, linking to another tunnel at the other end. The bridge didn't have anything below holding it, and from the side there was no telling how deep it was. As the others joined him, they had done the same by looking around. Keep moving, it will hold our weight, don't worry. Logan said, it was used before, can't you see? The sides still have the blue lights. Logan continued forward ahead of everyone else, and the rest of the group soon followed. As they got up to the halfway point, Quinn was still a little behind everyone else and had only just arrived at the start of the bridge. Quinn, hurry up! Vorden shouted. Picking up speed, Quinn zoomed ahead to the center and turned around again. You guys keep going, I think I can get rid of a good chunk of them on this bridge. I'll slow them down as much as possible, and I promise I'll catch up. Vorden wanted to argue a case, telling him to come with them, but seeing the girls and the others, huffing and panting, he knew they were slowing down. Eventually, they would be caught if Quinn didn't do anything. As they were starting to gather on the bridge, Quinn threw out a blood swipe after blood swipe, knocking many of the Wendigos off the bridge. However, some were able to crawl underneath and started to make their way to the center, trying to attack them. But Quinn was strong, knocking them away and off with a single strike. Another group of them came towards him, and with his palm open, he started to shoot out the blood spray, knocking them back and a couple off the edges into the never-ending dark pit. Still, using the blood ability was taking up his life force, and he would need a better solution soon. The only good thing was some of the Wendigos were dying in the process, giving him a good amount of EXP, but it didn't seem like all the ones that were falling off the bridge had the same effect. Finally, the group had reached the end of the bridge and was at the entrance of the tunnel. What about Quinn? Layla asked as she turned around and saw him fighting the Wendigos. He'll be okay, Vorden said hesitatingly. Then something strange started to happen. Look, CIA pointed. They're heading back. The Wendigos were no longer pushing forward and instead started to slowly crawl back to the entrance, but then they made way, making sure not to block the path. A lot of them then proceeded to curl up into balls, and if one was to look close enough, a slight shiver could be seen. There was only one time when Quinn had seen a similar action happen before, and that was when the king-tier beast appeared underground. A large footstep was heard, and out from the shadow they could now all see what had the other Wendigos all startled. It was a beast that looked similar to them, but a bit different at the same time. Its body was pale, just like theirs, only wider and larger in size. Its forearms were longer, and at the end it had 3 claw-like fingers that stretched out about half a meter long. Its arms laid there by its side, and its fingertips scraped across the floor. Its eyes looked completely dead. As soon as Quinn saw it, he knew he was in trouble because the system had reacted. A ding in his ear was heard, and the notification screen in front of him appeared. Quest granted. Defeat the Boneclaw. Rewards? Optional quest. Become the Boneclaw's new master. Although he didn't really understand the details of the optional quest, he knew the only time when it didn't specify the reward meant it would be a tough battle ahead of them. Quinn looked back at the others. He could see their worried faces. Then he looked at all the Wendigos and the Boneclaw in front of him. Guys, Quinn shouted, exit from this place. Try to find as much information about Fex and Peter as you can, and wait for me. I'll see you there. As the Boneclaw and the Wendigos got closer towards the center of the platform, Quinn stomped his foot hard on the ground and punched downward, performing the hammer strike. The area he had punched was the thinnest part of the bridge, and in nearly an instant, the impact had caused the bridge to collapse and fall. The others slowly watched Quinn, the Boneclaw, and the Wendigos fall into the dark pit. The entire group had seen everything, and it was the last thing that they expected to happen. The long, thin bridge that connected the 2 tunnels had completely broken, and the strange, large creature with the army of Wendigos had fallen into the deep, dark pit. Quinn, surely there was a better way than that, Vorden said as he looked down in the dark hole, still not being able to even see the bottom. Not all of the Wendigos had fallen when the bridge broke, as there were still many on the other side. They continued to snarl and shout while looking at the others, while standing partly on the broken bridge, and some inside the tunnel. One of the Wendigos ran forward and used what little part of the bridge there was before it tried leaping with all of its power. It managed to gain quite a height and distance, but it only managed to reach the halfway point before falling down into the bottomless pit. After seeing this, a few of the other Wendigos attempted to do the same, but all of them ended in the same result. A while later they could tell that there was no way to get to the other side and started to leave, heading back into the tunnel. It seemed they had at least some instincts. Once they had left, the growls and cries had stopped and no longer echoed. It had quietened down, and the group could hear their own thoughts. With this, Vorden went to grab a small stone from inside the tunnel. He peeked over the edge and let go, dropping the stone. The group waited and waited as the stone fell, but no sound was heard. Clenching his fist and closing his eyes, Vorden could only hope Quinn was okay. It's a big drop, but it doesn't mean he's dead, Logan said, as he knew what they were all thinking and what Vorden was trying to do with his little test. If they were to hear a sound when the rock reached the bottom, then it would give them an idea of how far the drop down was, but they had heard nothing. He's not dead, Layla said with confidence as she placed her hand across her chest and closed her eyes. The connection, I can still feel it. He's alive. We should do what he said, try to find a way out here, and meet him outside when we can. Layla's words managed to cheer up both Logan and Vorden. They knew she wouldn't lie about something like this. If Quinn was dead, then she would probably be on her knees sobbing, and the fact she wasn't doing that gave the 2 of them confidence. Do you think he can get out? CIA asked. Looking at the broken bridge, it was their only way to the strange base, and Logan started to think if there was any way they would be able to return to it in the future. This place is quite grand and large, and considering it was used as a facility at one point, it's quite possible there is more than one exist. Logan explained. Remember, there were 2 tunnels to choose from. We haven't run into any other pathways when we were running down, so we can guess the other tunnel leads somewhere else. Also, back at the lab where we started, apart from the 6 doors for the trials, there were also the 2 large shutter doors on either side. Most likely there is more than one way to get there. Still, even if there were multiple exits, if one was to get back to the lab, they would have an army of creatures to deal with. Before the group set off, Vorden looked down the pit one more time, as the image of the Boneclaw was pictured in his head. I hope those things are dead, especially the big boy, and not with you down there, Quinn. Good luck. Carefully, the group continued to walk through the tunnels, and they were now traveling in pairs. Vorden stuck at the front with Logan. With his equipment, he was able to see and lead the way, and Vorden would be his type of body to guard if anything was to come out, while CIA and Layla stayed at the back. using Layla's ability to see in the night. They were quite confident no more creatures would come from behind and attack since the bridge was broken, so this formation was designed by keeping both Layla and CIA in mind. Being ranged and support types, they could help out wherever possible. Due to her vampire subclass, Layla didn't have the things that Quinn did, such as super strength, speed, and so on. However, her powers also didn't really depend on Quinn like Peter, but instead on her own emotions and CIA's next to her. Proceeding cautiously through the tunnel, they slightly jumped a few times, formed strange noises, but most of it was just a water drip from above, or someone kicking a stone across the floor. CIA seemed to be continually praying along the way, as she felt frightened, but every so often that would go away, and Layla standing next to her would feel satisfied. Still, looking at CIA, she really did seem like a different person compared to what she was before. CIA was a cocky, confident girl. Was it all because of the pure training? Can it really change a person that much? Seeing this, Layla started to think back to Aaron again. If CIA had changed this much from forgetting everything to do with pure, how much did Aaron change after learning everything about pure? Gripping her bow tightly, she remembered her resolve. She hadn't only come on this trip to save Fex and Peter or help Quinn out, but it was for herself, to grow her skills and get stronger so she could save Aaron one day. The path never split off, and it continued straight. They still walked, but it finally looked like something could be seen ahead. It was still dark, but a little bit of it was clear enough that it was different compared to the whole cave. Not just that, but it looked like the blue lights stopped ahead as well. Then they started to feel the wind breeze up ahead, and a smile appeared across all of their faces. "That's the exit, right?" "I'm right. That's the exit, yeah," CIA said excitedly. The group was now naturally walking faster than before, without even realizing it. The idea of getting out of this place was urging their tired and weak legs to walk faster, and then finally they had stepped out of the cave and were all fully outside. CIA and Layla, who were the most tired, immediately fell to the ground as they rested their bodies, while the two boys started to look around, taking in the scenery they were at and where they had just come from. The sky was dark, and 2 moons could be seen in front glowing. It allowed them to see without the need for night vision equipment, but it was still dark outside. However, it made one thing clear, that they were definitely no longer on Earth. In front of them, just out of the cave entrance, was a dark forest. The trees looked dead, but on a closer inspection, their leaves just weren't green in color like they were used to, and instead were a light gray in color. The forest blocked most of their vision, so they weren't able to see beyond. As they looked behind them to see what they had just exited from, it appeared they were inside a fairly large mountain this whole time. "Maybe if we climb up the mountain a bit, we can see where we are and what's around us," Logan said. "What already?" Layla complained. "Can't we have a brief rest before moving?" Honestly, Logan didn't think it was a good idea. They were in an unknown place and by the edge of the forest. Who knew what creatures remained here? "Don't worry," Vorden said. "I'll go. You look after the equipment and protect the girls. Then take this," Logan said as a spider ran down his sleeve and hopped on Vorden's shoulder. "When he comes back, I can see what you saw." The mountain wasn't too steep, and although there wasn't a direct pathway, Vorden was able to scale it with ease. Before climbing, he looked at it for a little while and had chosen the best path. It was all in his head as his foot pushed off from one platform to the other until eventually he was in a high enough place and stopped. Wasn't his ability just to copy others? Logan thought. He has a lot of skill. He reminds me of a ninja, CIA said. While on the top, Vorden looked out from the platform over the forest outward at their position. The forest was large, but it didn't look like it went on for too far. But past the forest, it looked like they could see what they were looking for. Lights were shining from the vampire settlement, and a giant castle stood at the end, surrounded by 7 castles on each side. His heart started to thump louder and louder, looking at the place. It was a beauty, a sight to behold, and soon they would be making their way there. The sound of water dripping could be heard constantly falling into a large lake. Each time it fell, a ripple would spread out. Floating in the pool of water, several bodies could be seen, bobbing up and down in the water. Some on their fronts with their heads stuck in the water, some on their back. One of these bodies was Quinn, lying on his back. His body continued drifting away, unaware of what was happening. Then suddenly, a large object came crashing down from above in the pool of water, causing waves that pushed Quinn's body off to the side until it had eventually caught on a piece of the cave flooring. His body pressed downward on the floor, with his cheek on the hard and cold surface. Slowly, his eyes started to open, unable to see the sight around him clearly, yet he could still feel the cold water on his legs as his bottom half was still submerged. I'm alive, Quinn thought, but the thoughts came slowly as if he couldn't quite piece things together. However, what little he could see was blocked by a notification screen, and he managed to make out a few of the messages he had received. You have received critical damage. Your health is falling. 9/95 HP. 8/95 HP. Clearing the messages away, Quinn was trying to see what was around him, but his body felt like it had been completely shattered. There was no telling how high the fall was from, and perhaps if he hadn't landed in a pool of water, he would have no longer been alive to tell the tale. Still, even if he couldn't move, he tried to look around. All he could see near him were a few of the Wendigos bodies who had also wound up on this part of the cave flooring. Some of them had missed the pool of water and were no longer moving, while another that wasn't too far away from Quinn was starting to crawl his way to him. Its legs had been smashed, but they were regenerating, and with its long skinny arms, it pulled itself across the floor, inching its way closer. "Arg!" it screamed, and then it started to pick up speed. "I will not die here," Quinn shouted, but he was far too weak to move. Then the Wendigo's body stopped moving. With his vision still blurry, it was hard to make out what had happened, but it looked like something had stabbed it through its head. And a few seconds later, its head had fallen to the floor. Seeing this, at this moment, Quinn's eyes went to black again. 5/95 HP. Auto-activating blood bank. 100 milliliters of blood has been consumed. Regenerating. A certain amount of time had passed, but it was hard to tell how long. This time, as Quinn regained consciousness, he could see a lot better. He shook his head and slowly lifted himself out of the water as he tried to remember what happened. When he was hurt, he wasn't able to think straight. It had not only affected his vision, but his mind as well. The blood bank had luckily healed him up, using it automatically. 55/95 HP. There was still a 100 milliliters of blood left to be used, just in case of emergencies, and Quinn would keep that for now. He wasn't hungry for blood, and he should have healed enough for it to start eating naturally on its own over time. He started looking around him, and he could see that the 20 or so Wendigos that had fallen with him were now dead. However, he started to notice something strange. Although some of them had died from falling, not all of them did. The memory of one coming after him was appearing in his head. As he walked around and took a look, Quinn could see that a lot of the Wendigos' heads had been sliced off. What happened to them? The large cut made it look like whatever was able to kill them was able to do so with ease. It was also a clean strike. Quinn started to twist his head around in different directions as if he was looking for something, but he couldn't see it anywhere. When they were on that bridge, there was a large new creature they hadn't seen before, called the Boneclaw. Quinn was sure it had fallen down with him, but looking around, he couldn't find traces of it anywhere. Did it sink into the water, or maybe it left me alone because it thought I was dead? Quinn thought. When on that bridge, Quinn knew what he was doing. He wasn't just being reckless. As he attacked the Wendigos on the bridge, and they fell into the pit, around half of them he gained EXP from, meaning they had fallen and died. As for the others that fell, he gained nothing. There was a good chance that Quinn would survive, and knowing his body was several times stronger than the Wendigos, it was the only thing he could think of at the time, hopefully also dealing with the big Boneclaw as well. Still, the mystery of the disappearing Boneclaw and the cut-up Wendigos wasn't of his concern. What was more important to him right now was finding a way out. Standing by the pool of water, Quinn looked up to see if he could possibly see the bridge from up high, but there was nothing. He needed to find another way out. Looking around, there were a few tunnels that looked like they led somewhere, but unlike the ones above which had blue lights leading the way, these had none, suggesting they were not man-made paths. However, there were some blue crystals stuck into the wall on the other side of the pool of water, which lit up the place quite nicely. Before going, Quinn went to brush some water over his face. He was just about to until he saw all the dead Wendigos in the water. Maybe that's not a good idea. As he looked down into the water, though, he spotted his own reflection coming off it. A panic set in seeing this. When looking at his own face, he could see something over his shoulder too. Quickly, he twisted his body, turning around while throwing out his fist, hoping to hit the creature. But his fist carried on going forward as it hit nothing but air, and his whole body spun around. A fighting stance had been taken, and his eyes started to dart around the room. Yet there was nothing apart from him and the dead Wendigo's body. But I saw it. The Boneclaw was right there in the reflection. Sure that he wasn't going crazy, he started to look around the area again, seeing if he could see it anywhere, but still nothing. Returning to the pool of water, Quinn gulped before looking down again. And there it was, staring right back at him at his own face, but by his side the Boneclaw as well. Turning his head again, there was nothing there. Turning back to look at the reflection, the Boneclaw was there again. Still afraid that it might all be a trick, Quinn punched the reflection in the water, causing large waves to crash. As the water slowly filled back up and started to settle, he could see the reflection once again, and it was still there over his shoulder. Seriously, am I going crazy? Trying to look out of the corner of his eye, he went to see if it was there, but still nothing. It was clear that the Boneclaw only could be seen when looking in the reflection. A thought came into his head about the optional quest that had come at the time. Also, the notifications that appeared that he got rid of. Maybe the answers were in there. Status 32890/51200 EXP. Killing around 20 or so of the Wendigos had given him a nice amount of EXP, but that wasn't what he was trying to find right now. However, if the Boneclaw had died in the fall, then surely he would have at least leveled up from it. That's when he spotted something strange by his name, something he never thought he would see. Familiar. Boneclaw. Bring up past notifications, Quinn ordered. He could see the blood bank being activated, and him losing health, but before that he could see it. Next to it was a congratulations message. Quest failed. Defeat the Boneclaw. Congratulations. Optional quest has been completed. Become the Boneclaw's new master. Quest reward. You have obtained Boneclaw as your familiar. Looking at his status, Quinn was at a loss for words. It was an understatement to say that he was shocked. He truly didn't understand what was going on at all, and there were far too many questions he needed to ask and answered at once. Somehow, he had managed to complete an optional quest, and all of this was done while he was passed out in the water. How is that possible? What happened? Trying hard to think back at any possibilities, there really was nothing that he could think of. Even if the Boneclaw had been defeated by the sudden fall, then why wasn't the first quest complete? And what even were the conditions to become the Boneclaw's master? Luckily, there was one person with him who could probably answer his questions. Although he wasn't heavily relying on him for help, because there were many times he had failed him before. Okay, I guess I should start with a simple question first, Quinn said, looking and staring at his status screen. What's a familiar? I thought you started to hate me because you hadn't talked to me in so long. The system replied. Well, I can safely say that we are in my domain now. So any questions you have on this type of topic, I can freely give you all the information you need. It said in a cheery voice. Although Quinn did not look entertained, as he remembered the image of the horrible Boneclaw, it was still sending small shivers down his spine as he thought about it. A familiar is a vampire's companion. Think of it like a little pet. They do whatever their masters wish for. Their life force is now linked together with yours. But some stronger familiars do have a will of their own, so do not confuse that with complete control. Just because their life is linked with yours does not mean it will do what you say. However, it does mean that they will do everything in their power to protect you. Usually, if a familiar dies, it doesn't really die either. It's just temporarily out of use as it takes a while for it to reform, and later on it can be used again. The only way to kill a familiar is to kill its owner. Usually, a marking or an item of some sort can be used to keep this on your person. Do you remember the earring Fex wore? That too was his own familiar. It certainly sounded like so far there were no downsides to having a familiar, apart from it not being completely under Quinn's control, but it seemed like the pros outweighed the cons. Does every vampire have a familiar? Quinn asked. No, the system replied. Familiars are, in a way, not of this world. Or you can even go as far as to say not of this universe. At least that's what my research showed me. The vampires from time to time are able to bring these families from their universe into our own. While this is a type of contract that is usually only formed when they agree to help each other, they tend to only attach themselves to the strong. You see, most of the time, the main goal of the familiar is to stay in this world, but they also have their own wishes. Over time, perhaps a natural bond will be created and they forego these wishes. But at the start, they are a picky, strange type. If they believe that their master can no longer satisfy their desires or wishes, they will attempt to kill the owner. They would rather die than be with someone so weak. Because of this, a special rule was put in place. Only the vampire leaders, as well as their successors, are able to have a familiar. Since this rule was implemented, I don't believe there has been an incident. Not during my time anyway. Over the years, we learnt more and more to make it less dangerous. So in truth, perhaps more vampires could have familiars as well, but now it has become a tradition to only allow the leaders and their successors to have them. As expected, there always seemed to be a downside to something like this. It couldn't have all just been one way, but nothing in life was like that. There had to be some kind of a balance. The image in his head had appeared of the Wendigo being stabbed through the head again. Then Quinn started to think about all the Wendigos that were dead around him. Was that all the doing of the Boneclaw? If that was the case, then instead of killing Quinn, did the Boneclaw decide to choose him as his master? Why me? Why did the Boneclaw choose me? Quinn asked. Well, although I said I could give you answers to everything, I can't read the Boneclaw's mind. However, there is someone we can ask. Why don't we ask the familiar himself? Knowing that the Boneclaw had chosen him, Quinn didn't think it would decide to kill him this early on. It was still too early on to tell whether or not he was worthy. So it shouldn't be a risk. How? Take off your shirt. The system ordered. What? Quinn said, a little embarrassed at the request that he made. Don't be silly now. I have no interest in a young boy's body. Who do you think I am? The system said, half annoyed. The reason why I'm asking is that there is no object, and when you look in the water, you are able to see the Boneclaw's reflection, correct? This means the Boneclaw has attached itself somewhere on you. Perhaps there is a marking of some kind, and right now I can't see any markings on you. I'm just hoping it's below your shirt and not anywhere else. Hearing this, Quinn too was hoping that the marking wasn't in some type of strange place. As he complied with the request and started to take off his shirt. Ah, there it is, the system said with joy. It looks like the marking is on your back. The marking was a circle the size of a fist down his back, and when looking closer, it looked more like a strange-looking skull, as it had two dark eyes and the mouth of a demon. It looks kind of cool. It suits you. Go on then, now we know where the marking is. Why don't you summon it? The system said. That's what I was waiting for you to tell me how to do, you idiot. Quinn said, as he was starting to get frustrated with the system more and more. Hey, it's been a long time and I can't tell you everything. Most of the time it comes from a special feeling. Why don't you just try to think of the Boneclaw? Maybe it will appear, the system shouted back. In truth, if one was to watch the argument that was going on right now, they would only be able to see one person here, Quinn shouting, and no one else. For when the system spoke, it would speak in his mind. Still, while the two were bickering loudly, the voice managed to attract some unwanted attention. One of the Wendigos who was in the water was still alive. It slowly started to paddle its way towards the noise. While all of this was happening, Quinn was unaware, still bickering away. A loud splash was heard as it leapt its way across the pond out, and with its long arms stretched it was coming towards Quinn. The loud shriek had shocked Quinn, but what surprised him even more was before he could even do anything to kill it, directly in front of him, the very thing he was trying to summon was there. The creature's body had blocked the view of everything. Its back was large, blocking Quinn's view, so he was unable to see anything that happened. Then when it turned around, the blood could be seen covering its long, dangling fingers. Not even for a second did Quinn even feel like he was the master of such a powerful-looking, scary thing. But it stood there right in front of him doing nothing, and the system also noticed the marking on his back had disappeared. Inspect. Boneclaw. Large undead, who always seemed to be suffering in hatred and pain. When searching for master, it specifically looks for those with the strongest source of evil intent in the area. It will do whatever it can to fill this need of its master's desires. They love to torture their victims and hide in the shadows. They have the ability to constantly teleport within a small area and will use their hardened bony fingers to slice their enemies. While some Boneclaws do appear before their masters and fulfill their wishes. At times they will go out on their own, fulfilling their master's subconscious desires. Reading the information in front of him made Quinn equally confused. He had no evil desires, or at least to him, he thought he had no evil desires. So why did it choose him? Or was it just stuck in the facility for so long that it had chosen to attach itself to the first thing it could see? Plucking up the courage, Quinn decided to ask. Why? Why did you choose me? Quinn said. The system wanted to interrupt Quinn, asking him what he was doing. If this confrontation ended badly, then there was a chance it could change its mind and try to kill Quinn, forcing a fight that they had just avoided. Boneclaws were incredibly strong, and the truth was the AI had never heard of a vampire managing to obtain one as a familiar before. At least not a normal vampire. The last one that had done was the Vampire King during his time. The Boneclaw didn't reply and simply lifted its finger, pointing to one of the tunnels. I think he wants you to go this way, the system said. Shortly after, the Boneclaw started to disappear in front of Quinn, like a shadow slowly fading, and eventually, the mark on his back had appeared again. Putting back his clothes on, Quinn felt like there was nothing he could do for now, and he would just have to go along with it. The Boneclaw chose him, and it didn't want to kill him. That was good enough for now. As long as it didn't try to stop him from trying to save Peter then, that was okay with him. Out of all the tunnels that he could have chosen to go down, Quinn eventually decided to pick the one that the Boneclaw had chosen. It was clear it didn't want to kill him, so perhaps it was trying to show him something. After a long walk down the tunnel, he was finally greeted with a few stairs. Walking up the stairs, there was what looked like two slanted doors. Pushing them open, the outside sky could be seen. He had finally exited from the cave. Returning down from the hill, Vorden explained to the others what he had seen, while the little spider hopped back over that was with him and was able to pass on the information to Logan. He could now see everything as if he was on top of the hill and had seen everything himself. They decided to move a little away from the entrance, but not too far so they were out of sight of the exit. They found a small covering. It looked like a den inside the mountain, which made it nice for cover, but it didn't go in too deep. They stayed here while one person would keep watch on the entrance. The reason why they chose to do this was just in case Quinn would soon be out after them. But as time went past, it was becoming more apparent that he might not be coming out anytime soon. Still, everyone thought it would be a good time for them to rest before setting off again. They had just gone through quite a draining experience after all. So, the castles and everything, this really is the vampire's home planet? Layla asked. Yeah, looks like it, and judging by the size of the city, it seems like there's quite a lot of them as well. Vorden replied, as he stood just outside the small exit of the cave watching the entrance where they had come from. So, what is the plan? CIA said, sitting and leaning her head on Layla's shoulder. It might be possible that Quinn has already left through another exit. Logan said, although we could wait for him, he did say to go and try to find out as much information as possible. The mountain is quite large, and as soon as he leaves, he might also head straight for the vampire settlement. We're only wasting our time here if we stay any longer. The others sat in silence as they thought about it for a while. They honestly all knew what they needed to do, but still they just weren't quite ready for it yet. Judging by how Quinn had been acting in school and this whole time here, he was recently trying to rush through everything. The others couldn't really blame him for this either, as they had a month in total to find out where Fex and Peter was, come up with a plan to save them, and safely return back to the school. It sounded like a lot of time, but it really wasn't at all, especially when they had no starting point and no information to go on. They were in the unknown. Using the tools in Logan's backpack, he was able to give out some blankets for the others to sleep in. They took it in turns as they slept. It looked like for now the mountain area was quite safe, at least the outside area of it. So far they hadn't seen any signs of life, including beasts or a sort that came close to it. But they couldn't say the same for the forest as they had yet to enter. After everyone had a good rest, they were now ready to set off again. Layla looked at the sky, and it was still dark outside. It felt strange to go to sleep and wake up hours later still seeing the sky the same color. But it was something they all just had to get used to. Okay, everyone, have your spray bottles and masks ready, Logan said. Apart from Layla, the others took out the spray bottles with the red liquid inside. Logan demonstrated giving 2 sprays to himself, and the others followed. To them, they could smell no difference. Layla also couldn't tell the difference, which meant it was most likely an ability that only the vampires possessed, and was not part of the subclass's abilities. With the masks, just keep them on you for now. It's okay if they see your face. We are not here to cause trouble anyway. But if something happens, we get split up or anything of the sort, then we will be able to communicate using these. Logan explained. Did you have to say that? Layla said. You know you just jinxed us, right? With everything packed and done, the group took one last look at the cave entrance they had exited from, hoping Quinn would be there, but still, there were no signs of him. Closing her eyes, Layla could still faintly feel him, so she decided to continue walking forward, knowing he was okay. As they entered the forest, just like when inside the cave, they were on high alert. This in itself was mentally draining. Perhaps a large snake, or maybe even something worse than the Wendigos were in here, but they knew it needed to be done, so they carried on moving with caution together. As they continued to walk, they saw plants that they had never seen before, strange, large, multicolored mushrooms. Trees that bended and twisted in strange ways. It was similar to a beast planet, but for some reason, they just felt like everything looked 10 times scarier. The city shouldn't be too far ahead. Do you think we'll get in okay? Vorden asked. From what I saw, there didn't seem to be any gate or anything of that sort situated there. Logan said, perhaps they are confident in their strength, or maybe this is the first time their base has even been found without them knowing about it. And what happens if they find out we aren't actually vampires? CIA asked as she took a gulp. Taking a guess, perhaps we would be put in a class container like the last one. Logan replied, fed to some creatures or pets the vampires own. Maybe our blood will even be used for food. I wonder if my blood tastes good. Would you please stop going into details? Layla replied, seeing CIA was now feeling a bit woozy. Maybe we shouldn't ask questions we don't want to know the answer to. Vorden replied. Just then, the sound of leaves could be heard rustling behind them. In an instant, they turned around, but Vorden chose to not draw his weapons out. This was because the sound wasn't just coming from one direction. The rustling of leaves were coming from multiple directions. As they looked at what was happening, all they could see was black figures moving from tree to tree at an incredibly fast speed. And when it finally reached them, each of them was ready for a confrontation. A few seconds later, though, and nothing happened. The small black shadows that could be seen from the trees continued heading forward, heading towards the city. What were they? CIA whispered to Layla. I think it's best if we stop talking about our situation now that we're getting closer to the vampire settlement. Vorden said. We all know how good Quinn's hearing is. There are others who could be the same. Vorden didn't say it outright, but Logan understood why he had brought it up. It was a good chance that the things that were moving about in the trees were vampires. The group continued to walk forward for a little bit, this time not saying anything to each other. But then, the rustling of leaves sounded again. When looking behind them, only with 2 of the trees this time could they see the leaves rustling from one onto the next. They were heading towards the group, and Logan continued walking while signaling to everyone that they should do the same. I told you we would be late, a voice shouted out loudly. I can't believe you wanted to try to look for something better. It's not my fault. When we all go in like that, they all run away. Well, hopefully this is a nice enough gift for our first day. Another male voice said. As the 2 boys jumped from tree to tree, a certain smell managed to enter one of their noses. When looking down, they could see a group of kids. Hey, do you think they know what time it is? One of them asked. What? Walking at that speed? Of course not. The other replied. Suddenly, in front of the group out from the trees, 2 figures dropped directly in front of them. Both of them were male, and looked to be around the same age as them. One of them was black-skinned in color with a crew cut named Fred, while the other had long, wavy hair that split both ways, going down to his shoulders, named Snow. They looked like an odd pair of friends, but that didn't matter right now. Hey, do you know what time it is? If you guys don't hurry up, you're going to be late. Fred said. The others didn't reply to it, knowing that if they said something wrong or suspicious, it could become troublesome. Hence they decided to leave it to Logan instead. Late, Logan said, and nothing else. What he was pleased about, though, was it seemed like they hadn't been found out and the spray had worked. Yes, late. They'll kill you if you're late, Snow shouted, looking concerned. The others standing at the back were getting more frightened by the words. Kill. Yeah, the teachers will kill us, Fred said. It's the first day of school after all. Walking through the forest, the group and the two vampires were now traveling together. Not much was set apart from their initial reaction. One, because of how much of an urgency they seemed to be in, and two, because the others didn't want to say anything either. At first, they were running through the forest. They were now not traveling up in the trees, but by foot, and every so often they seemed to stop to check their position. This was good for some of the others, as they felt like they were outright sprinting just to keep up, rather than jogging, but soon they started to slow down as they got closer to their destination. Without saying much more, the group felt like they had no choice but to follow the students in front of them. They all had no clue how the vampire system worked, but one thing was clear: they were mistaken as students. Vorden, while looking at the others, couldn't really blame them either. Apart from him, the others looked like kids, perhaps even younger. Especially Logan with his short body frame and small limbs. He was surprised he didn't get mistaken for a middle schooler more often. The good news was that the group wasn't too far away from the location that they needed to go, but then while following Fred, he noticed that they took a slight detour. Right now, they were not heading towards the large city at all, but off to the side. Come on, you slowpokes, Fred said, annoyed. I know we're nice to show you the quickest way and everything, but we don't want to be late. Just then, as they had exited out of the forest, the trees started to clear, and they could see what only looked like a regular school campus. Maybe regular wasn't the correct word, as it seemed like the building was built in an old Victorian style. There were a total of 4 separate buildings. In front of that was a large open dirt field. A couple of hundreds of students could be seen walking inside. And off to the side of the main building, there were 3 old buildings to the right. Some of the students were heading that way as well, but far fewer. Well, we got you here, Snow said. So don't blame us if you don't hurry it up. The two quickly fled ahead and went to enter the school. What do we do? Layla asked. This isn't the main city, right? By my calculation. Logan replied. It shouldn't be too far from here. It should only be a few hundred meters to the right. So should we just leave? CIA asked as she continually looked at the students, although she had to admit most of them looked just like regular humans. But just as she thought this, she spotted a strange female student with wings and a tail on her back going off into one of the buildings. No, they're not normal at all. Maybe that's not a good idea, Vorden said. We don't know the vampire's rules. Maybe all students around our age are required to go to school. If we were spotted around town, it would raise suspicion. Right now, we know nothing about this world, and it could be a good chance to learn more about it. They knew Vorden spoke good sense. The humans had a drafting system themselves, and even in the past, there were some countries that had laws that were different from others. The worst thing they could do is offend someone without knowing it, causing a big issue while they were here. But won't they know we aren't meant to be part of the school? Layla said. You can leave that to me. Logan replied. There's bound to be a computer system somewhere. It's clear they use technology. Based on the teleporters, it might even be better than our own. Also, I think we all missed one big point. Fex was the same age as us. Surely he went to school as well. This could be the perfect opportunity to learn what happened to him, or what is going to happen to him. We can regroup with Quinn and leave this place later once we find everything. With that said, the decision would be made. For now, they would pretend to be students learning about the vampire ways and world, also while trying to gather information on Fex. Oh, and one more important thing, I don't think I need to say this, but I thought so just in case. Logan said, remember to spray yourself. Every 4 hours. The maximum limit is 5. Don't let anyone see you doing this unless you have to. And lastly, although the spray can cover up your outside smell, it can't cover up what's inside you. The girls looked a little confused about this. I'm talking about your blood. Don't go causing trouble. Don't start any fights. If they catch a whiff of our actual blood, I'm sure the whole place will know in seconds that we are humans. They all nodded and understood, and it took a few seconds more for CIA than the others to pluck up the courage to start moving forward. But as long as she had Layla by her side, she knew she would be okay. As she turned her head to take a look at her, she gave a smile. As the group walked towards the school together, they made sure to stay close. It wasn't much of a problem, as kids often traveled in groups, so it didn't look too suspicious. But suddenly, as they entered the middle of the field, they heard a scream. "Aw!" A group of shrieks at the same time was made. As the group turned their heads to see what was happening, it was a group of 5 girls who looked a little odd. Some of them had tails, while others had more vampiric or demonic features. Even a bit of red skin on one of them. Did they find us out this soon already? Vorden thought as he started to feel his back sweating a little. Then one of the girls lifted their hands and pointed at Layla while they continued to scream. And the next second they had rushed over. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" the girl at the front said. She was a blonde girl, with a fairly large rack, and had her shirt open, revealing it as so. One of the most unusual features was the single horn on top of her head, and the red tail that came out from her behind. "Wouldn't you want to just stick your head in those and shake them about?" Ratton said. Vorden honestly didn't have a response, and looked away from the girl, so Ratton could no longer see. Although this didn't go unnoticed by the blonde girl in the front, and she quickly moved over to the side, and started to go up Vorden's leg with the end of her tail. "Please don't," Vorden said, having grabbed the tail before it could do anything else. "PFT, you're no fun," the girl said as she went back to the other girls who had practically surrounded Layla and shunned CIA out of the circle. CIA was constantly trying to get in so she could stay close, but she couldn't in the end. "I can't believe it," one of them said as she placed her hands and started to touch the 2 small bumps on her forehead. "They're real." The group of girls continued to stare at Layla as if they were starstruck, and Layla didn't know how to deal with this at all, as she continued to fidget, but didn't want to try to shove her way out of the circle. "Are you really a Hanya?" one of the girls asked. Layla knew what she was after Logan and Quinn had informed her. She then went on to do some research of her own, and she was indeed the Hanya thing that they were referring to. Yes I am," Layla replied, in a soft, shy voice. "Wow. So she really is one. I've never seen one. Weren't they meant to be all ugly, but this one is so pretty," another girl said. "Come on," the blonde girl in front said as she grabbed Layla by the hand. She started to drag her off to one of the buildings located to the side. "We'll look after you. Otherwise, these scary, boring boys will take advantage of you." She then quickly pulled her tongue out at Vorden, whose face had gone red at this point. "Wait," CIA shouted, but Logan quickly stopped her from saying anything else. Logan noticed that the building they were heading to wasn't the same building that Fred and Snow had gone into. On closer inspection, it looked like different types of people were heading into different buildings. As Layla was being pulled away, she had to ask, "What's going on? Aren't we supposed to go to the main building?" Layla said, "Don't be silly," the blonde girl replied. "That's only for vampires. We're subclasses. You have Category A over there, then Building B, and us are in C. Looks like you didn't pay much attention to the information they sent to your home, but don't you worry, we'll look after you." Layla then turned her head as she continued to be dragged away from the others, with a concerned look on her face. She had been separated from the group, but she wasn't the only one that was affected, as CIA too now felt like she was alone.